Chapter 43-26. This is a big problem. Long Shangyun rolled her eyes and could not help but say, "What do you know? Not everyone can casually go to the river of forgetfulness. Mortals like these cannot enter our river of forgetfulness realm." Arbor looked up at her. The latter waved at her in exasperation. "There is no use in saying so much. You will know when you go." Long Huan did not refute her sister this time. She nodded at Arbor and said, "That is true. It is very difficult for mortals to enter the river of forgetfulness. Even if clan leader is lenient and agrees to give them a pass, these mortals still need a talisman to enter the river of forgetfulness with their physical conditions." Long Huan shrugged and said, "It is very difficult to obtain." Long Shangyun nodded again. "It is difficult enough for normal Xiozha to enter the river of forgetfulness. You still want to bring a group of mortals in? Impossible. It is as difficult as ascending to heaven." Arbor asked expressionlessly, "What is so difficult about using the storage talisman to bring them in? Could they go into the water? Or could they not pass through the river of forgetfulness realm? They were all in the storage talisman. What other problems could there be?" It was just an excuse. They did not want to accept these troublesome fishermen at all. Long Shangyun was speechless. She looked dazedly at her for a moment before saying in exasperation, "In short, it is not possible." The old woman saw that they were about to quarrel and hurriedly advised from the side, "Everyone, do not quarrel over this old woman and others. If we can get rid of those evil beings behind the island, maybe we can continue to survive on this island. The water source of your island has been destroyed. It is impossible to continue to stay here." Arbor looked seriously at the old woman. "Do not worry. Go gather people first." Yes. The old woman stood up shakily. Arbor called and had Feng Zhangfei help the old woman to gather people. Long Shangyun glared angrily at the person in front of her. "You are used to being a good person. Do you know that ever since the corpse poison spread in the sea and the living environment became worse, we have been forced to move to the south of the river of forgetfulness? It is not easy for our clansmen to survive, and we have to take care of these troublesome mortals? What are you thinking, Shangyun?" Long Huan tugged at her hand and turned to look at Arbor. "Cousin, what Shangyun said is true. Furthermore, the river of forgetfulness is indeed not suitable for ordinary humans to live in. You will understand once you go there. How about this, cousin? I'll send someone to send them out of the sea and settle down in a nearby city." But Long Huan glanced at Arbor and said, "We need to leave this cargo ship to them. For the rest of the journey I'll have to rely on my cousin's cough, Qishout Songlong. What do you think?" Long Shangyun's eyes lit up as she looked at Arbor. She had had enough of this cargo ship. Her arms and thighs were so sore from sleeping last night that she felt like dying. He might as well sleep on the little stoic's bamboo couch. Not only was it clean and refreshing, but there was also a cotton quilt on top of it. He could pass the night comfortably and needn't worry about anything. "That's right. Can we not charge for it?" Long she asked weakly. When he saw Sir Jojo glance at him, he hastily added, "Or we can charge less." After all, they wanted to commandeer Sir Jojo's ship because they wanted to do a good deed. If they had to fork out their own money to rent Qishout Songlong, then they would be too innocent. Chapter 43-27. Long Shangyun glared at her brother. Her brother was becoming more and more obsequious in front of the stoic face. It was truly an eyesore. Arbor glanced at the siblings and looked up when she heard footsteps. She saw the elderly woman leading a group of about 70 to 80 old, weak women and children in front of them and saluting in unison. No need to be so courteous. Arbor nodded indifferently and turned to look at Long Qin, who was sneaking glances at her. Find a few more people to take them back and settle them down. Long Qin sighed in relief, and a happy expression appeared on his face. Okay. He had thought that his cousin was going to oppose him again and stubbornly take these people back to the river of forgetfulness. He didn't expect her to be so easy to talk to and agree immediately. "Cousin, don't worry. I will definitely take care of this matter properly. I will definitely take these people to the seaside city and settle them down properly." Arbor nodded expressionlessly. Perhaps it was because they were used to her expressionless attitude, but Long Qian and his sister didn't think much of it, so you'll get used to it after looking at it for a while, right? In the past, they might have thought that the damn stoic face was always stoic, as though someone owed her millions of spirit coins. They really wanted to tear off her stoic face and viciously stomp on it a few more times before giving it a good beating. But now they might think, oh, isn't it perfectly normal for a stoic face to always be stoic? Long Qian called over 4 or 5 strong men from the dragon clan and instructed them to take the old, weak, women, children, and the boatmen back with them. There was still a lot of food left on the ship and it was all left for them. Calculating the time, these supplies would be enough when they returned to the seaside city. The old woman and the old, weak, women and children on the island originally thought that they were going to die here, but they didn't expect to see a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. They naturally thanked Arbor and the others profusely. Qing Hongsa couldn't help but mutter, "If we leave all that food to them, what will we do in the future?" Third sister, we cultivators won't starve to death even if we miss out on a few meals. Qing Hongsa was a little dissatisfied. Why did she have to pay for food in order to take care of a few strangers after she had fled so bitterly? That ship of supplies was prepared by the queen in advance, and it was given to an outsider for free. Arbor ignored her. This Qing Hongsa, other than having a foul mouth and being selfish, didn't have much else. If she didn't pay attention to her, over time, this person would naturally shut her mouth. Besides, they had also used a lot of the supplies on the ship in the past 10 days. They were all ordinary living utensils, food, fruits, and the like. What was there to feel bad about? Previously, young Lord Long had spent a lot of money in sovereign capital to purchase high-grade goods from Kaidai Veranda and Precious Painting Workshop. She had stored them in a storage talisman without using them. What golden silk veil, fine satin quilt? It was just the right thing to use to spread out his crimson firmament blue wave boat and live a comfortable life. Do you want to take a look at the stone array at the back? To be honest, Long Huan was quite curious. What kind of powerful Xiozha could set up such a powerful stone formation behind the village? How could a mere stone array trap so many corpse puppets? Even Imo Lien felt that it was somewhat magical. If it was really useful, it would be a good idea to learn it. The young couple looked at each other, nodded, and walked towards the back of the village. Chapter 43-28. Everyone followed the young couple's footsteps and sprinted to the back of the village. When they saw it, they couldn't help but be stunned. There was an enormous stone formation in front of them. Each stone was so wide that it would take 3 people to wrap their arms around it, and more than 1.5 adults' height. These large stones seemed to have been moved here by unknown Xiozha from somewhere. They were abruptly erected in the empty space behind the village. One stone was separated by another. There were hollow patterns of various shapes and colors carved on them, and they looked slightly eerie. Arbor took a look and then looked away. The little guy who did not understand formations looked up at her husband. His brow was furrowed as he looked intently at the formation in front of him. He did not blink for a long time. Jojo Darren did not dare to disturb him. He stood next to him and carefully examined his expression. Xiao Qiao's lotus was usually very handsome. Now that he was serious, he looked even more handsome and beautiful, with an outstanding demeanor. Handsome, the little guy thought inside. Her little hand wanted to go and grab him but stopped midway. When Imo Lien refocused, she saw the little guy's white hand that had retracted. She did not hesitate to reach out and grab it. "Jojo, I found 2 life gates and know the essence of this formation. Let's go." Imo Lien excitedly grasped her little hand and pulled her into the stone formation. "Pay attention to your steps, don't mess up your steps." Imo Lien ordered and pulled Arbor into the stone formation. He Qin, Feng Changqing and the others naturally followed without hesitation. Long Ji, Long Xiang Yun, Qing Shueshue and the others hurriedly followed. Qing Hongsa hesitated for a while. Seeing everyone go in, she could only reluctantly follow. She couldn't be alone and not follow the group, right? If those people went out from another exit and left her on this deserted island, then wouldn't she be finished? Be careful. Arbor threw out a dozen defensive seals around everyone. There may be many corpse puppets here, pay attention to your defenses. Yes. Everyone nodded warily and followed behind Imo Lien and Arbor. Apart from following them with full concentration, they also had to spare a portion of their spiritual awareness to check if there were any approaching corpse puppets. Didn't the young adults on the Fisherman's Island trap the zombies of the adventurers in this stone array? Why haven't we found a single corpse along the way? Long Shangyun couldn't help but ask. "Don't slack off," Arbor said calmly. Long Shangyun rolled her eyes. Suddenly, her pupils constricted as she saw a white figure pounce out from the side, heading straight for her neck. That thing's pale face, coupled with its distorted facial features, almost caused Long Shangyun to be distracted and vomit. When Long Shangyun saw that the corpse puppet had already arrived in front of her, she summoned her sword from her consciousness with a clang. When she killed the corpse puppet, she had just exhaled a breath of air when she suddenly froze. Countless strange white birds jumped out from the corpse puppet's exploded body. one of them opened its beak and tried to bite her arm. In the blink of an eye, a black gold arrow brushed past Long Shangyun's arm and instantly shot through the strange bird's neck. Everyone raised their swords to kill the white corpse birds that flew over. Suddenly, a milky white fog appeared in front of them, enveloping everyone in it in an instant. They couldn't even see their own fingers. Chapter 43-29. Jojo's Lotus? Arbor immediately reached out to grab the wrist of the man next to her. However, she was instantly displeased when she grabbed nothing but air. Where did Jojo's Lotus run off to in such a short time? Her footsteps were light, and she didn't panic as she walked through the layers of white mist. She casually released an arrow and disposed of a panting zombie. She inwardly thought, the zombies trapped in this stone's white mist formation seem to be low-level creatures. It shouldn't be difficult for the Feng tribe youths to deal with them, so there's no need to worry about them getting injured. Arbor closed her eyes and shot several zombies' heads in succession. As usual, she picked up the crystal cores on the ground and tossed them into her small pouch. These zombies didn't produce higher-level black crystals in their heads. It seemed that it was because they took different medicinal liquids. She could basically confirm now that people who took ordinary basic mutated medicinal liquids couldn't become high-level zombies even after they turned into zombies. If they wanted to become high-level level 2 zombies or above, they had to take mutated medicine. After taking it, the embryonic form of black crystals would probably gradually form in their heads, and the black crystals would become more and more solid after repeated improvements. She wondered how much superhuman's abilities would improve after absorbing this kind of black crystal. Arbor was a bit curious and secretly decided that after she cut open a piece of black crystal, she would test it out to see how much it could improve her psychokinesis. In any case, ever since she took the holy fruit, her body had become impervious to all poisons. A trifling corpse poison couldn't harm her at all. She had already developed antibodies against zombies, so even if she was scratched by a more powerful zombie, it couldn't harm her body in the slightest. A gust of wind came from behind her head. Xiao Mu didn't even look at it, directly shooting out a crow gold arrow with a flick of her wrist. However, this time she didn't hear the expected scream. The newcomer moved very quickly and continued to reach for the back of her neck. It was a living person. Arbor's lips revealed a grim smile. She covered her hand with a Vajra talisman and grabbed the other person's wrist with a flip of her wrist. The newcomer was shocked and hastily dodged. Unfortunately, it was already too late. When this little stoic's ice-cold hand tightly clasped his wrist, the newcomer felt unwell all over. Especially when he heard a soft crack sound in the silent air. As the fear in his heart spread, large beads of sweat involuntarily fell from his forehead. His wrist, was broken by the stoic face just like that? Show me your true face. A strong beam of light shone on the person's half-dark and half-gloomy face. Arbor sneered, the 5 vines between his fingers darting towards his opponent's throat like snakes. It was as fast as lightning and as strong as the wind, causing the other party to break out in a cold sweat. Holding his broken wrist, he quickly retreated. Arbor chased after him with a sneer in his eyes. Luring the enemy in? You still want to trick Joe? Who was it that was so stupid to impatiently make a move? This method of doing things was not at all like Mu Qingya's brilliant method of calmly waiting for the right opportunity. Which scoundrel was it that hid his head but showed his tail? He didn't realize he was being funny at all. Rip. A spirit-binding rope abruptly landed on Arbor's body and tightly wrapped around him 7 or 8 times. The other end of the rope was held by the person with the broken wrist. Right now, he was looking at her with a smug expression, as if victory was already in his grasp. Chapter 43-30. Arbor could clearly see this person's face hidden behind the stone array, half in light and half in shadow. It was a very delicate face, but at this time, because of the pain, that face had long been distorted into a rather ugly appearance. She had seen this face not long ago. It was the person who had given her a trace of a nightmare from her previous life in Xingjiue's battle arena the moment they met. Jiue Academy's Bu Yi? The one who followed beside Li Xiangbei. Arbor hooked her lips. What, has Tianyun set his sights on Jiue Academy again? Tianyun had sent people everywhere to hide in aristocratic academies to search for more talents for his organization to test medicine, right? Bu Yi clutched his broken left wrist, looking coldly at Arbor and said fiercely, Arbor, I've been waiting for you for a long time. The grudge between the two of them had grown big. Originally, 2 fingers on his hand had been broken by the Crown Prince's people because of this woman. Now that his entire wrist was broken, new and old grudges added together, it really made one abnormally angry. Waiting for me? Arbor looked up at his incomparably loathsome face. Where does your confidence come from? Bouyi snorted coldly, shaking the spirit-binding rope in his hand. This is not an ordinary spirit-binding rope, it's more than enough to bind a divine realm cultivator like you. Are you sure? Arbor stared coldly at the other, the slender fingers stuck to her side moved slightly, and instantly felt the spirit-binding ropes binding on her body gradually tighten. Bouyi snorted lightly. I said don't waste your energy, you can't escape. Let me think, how should I take you away? Is it more convenient to let you fall asleep or to just break your legs? Arbor's cold eyes looked directly at the other, her lips curled slightly and a mocking sneer appeared. I think you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Bouyi was directly angered by her disdainful gaze, and an arc of light in his hand swept towards Arbor's knees. Arbor's eyes gradually turned cold. His limbs were tied up and he couldn't move his body. He felt as if something heavy was dragging him. Several defensive talismans appeared in front of him, and the power of the talisman enveloped his body, blocking the sword of buy in time. Startled Swan jumped out, and with a buzzing sound, it cut open the spirit-binding rope on her body. In just a few seconds, Arbor had already broken free. His figure leaped forward, and the startled swan dagger shone with a sharp aurora. It was cold and sharp like a line of snow, and it instantly cut open the clothes on Bai's chest. The man lowered his head and saw that his clothes were wide open. There was a torn wound on his skin and blood was flowing down. What a sharp dagger. Bai took a deep breath and suddenly felt very annoyed. He didn't expect that after just a few rounds he would be injured by this woman again and again. Now, even the spirit-binding rope couldn't bind her? Therefore, this dagger of hers must be an unstoppable divine artifact. Damn it. Bai's eyes darkened, and a layer of divine armor covered his upper body. The long sword in his hand was also covered with ice crystals, and he suddenly swung the dagger in front of him. He spun around and kicked and Bai flew into the air. The sword in his hand exploded, and he still slashed towards the little girl's legs. Of course he didn't want her to die. He wanted her to live a life worse than death. Arbor looked coldly at the incoming sword light, and summoned the thunder sword to meet it head-on. Suddenly she heard a flutter of clothes and Emolien's cold handsome face instantly blocked in front of her, and he summoned the black moon with a backhand. A long cry cut through the air, and the dark sword light of the black moon blocked Bai's fierce attack. Chapter 43-31. How did this person get here so quickly? Bouyi was shocked and his gaze flickered. This stone array had been modified by the array formation master he had brought with him, who had added some new things. He sneaked onto Fisherman's Island with his men without informing anyone, all for the sake of silently waiting there. After waiting here for 2 days, he had the formation master reinforce the stone formation. That was why the zombies could not escape. Otherwise, how could the original formation trap the zombies for so long? Once the stone formation was broken, the zombies should have rushed out to tear the remaining people in the village to pieces and eat them. So how could Prince Emo find this place so quickly? This formation had been modified by the formation master. Unless he was very familiar with the operation of this formation, it was impossible. Before he could continue hesitating, the Crown Prince's sword gleam caught up to him like lightning. Bouyi was shocked. As he retreated quickly, he threw out a round bead. The moment it exploded, smoke filled the air. His figure disappeared into the smoke. He clutched his aching left wrist and panted heavily. That damned Emolien. How did he get here so quickly? Didn't this array formation completely isolate many of them from the outside world? How could it be? Whoosh. A bright light broke through the heavy fog in front of him. It was like a scorching sun illuminating this space. An arc of sword gleam chased after Bouyi. Bouyi's eyes bulged. He was shocked. He bounced and rolled backward. He dodged a few times and avoided most of the sword gleam. However, he felt a chill on his shoulder. Lowering his head, he saw that blood was flowing out of his body. He had received another sword strike on his shoulder. Pain assaulted his heart. Bouyi was shocked. He looked up slightly and saw a slender figure holding a little girl's hand. They suddenly appeared not far away. They caught up again? Bouyi's current emotions were not just fear and uneasiness. He felt a strong sense of defeat. This kind of formation that covered the sky and waited for people to walk into a trap. However, it felt like catching a turtle in a jar. It made him feel powerless. A feeling that Emolien, this person, seemed to be undefeatable even rose from the bottom of her heart. Lord Jojo waved away the thick fog in front of his eyes. With one hand holding the Crown Prince's hand, he quickly passed through the fog formation. At a glance, he saw the ashen-faced Bai. Humph. Bui suddenly raised his hands and shouted, "Grandmaster Chu, change the formation." As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly disappeared into the stone formation behind him to the left. Emolian tightened her grip on Arbor. She looked coldly at the changing scenery in front of her. The original stone formation was suddenly filled with black chi. Ghostly wails and howls could be heard everywhere. It was as if the place in front of them had suddenly turned into a desert in hell. Countless ghostly hands passed through the thick fog and grabbed at the two of them. Emolian pulled the little fellow into her arms and single-handedly controlled the black moon sword to cut through the thick fog and cut off a claw. Seeing countless zombies pouncing at him from all directions, he swiftly lifted the little stoic up, allowing her to soar into the air. His movements were extremely fast as he leaped into the dense black ghost hand formation. His sword gleam filled the air, and holy power lingered around him. The little stoic looked down from midair and saw him moving gracefully like a startled swan and a swimming dragon. His figure shuttled through the dense black chi formation. Wherever his sword gleam went, it was as if it could split mountains, split seas, and split stars. Black chi scattered in all directions, and the ghostly wails and howls transformed into waves of tragic howls. Wherever the black moon sword gleam passed, it exterminated a swath of evil beings. It was so fast that it was dazzling. Chapter 43-32. In just a moment, the fog array was swept away by the Crown Prince's tyrannical power. The stone array crumbled into pieces, and the sound of explosions could be heard everywhere. Sir Jojo landed on the ground expressionlessly. Before he could steady himself, he was pulled into Prince Mo's arms again. He looked her up and down. Is something the matter? What could happen to her? She didn't even lift 2 fingers from beginning to end. Something happened, it must be because she was too bored. Emolian lowered his head and smiled at her. He patted her back. Don't be afraid. Arbor couldn't help but look down and roll his eyes. He didn't know which eye of his husband saw that she was afraid. Sir Jojo's gaze focused on a place under his feet. He raised his hand and pointed. Chase? Okay. Emolian nodded. He turned to look at the center of the stone array. There was a big hole. This should be the underground passage to the beach. Arbor frowned slightly. We can't let that person escape. He can't escape. Emolian didn't pull his wife down to chase after him. He just reached out his hand and pushed gently. A black fire that seemed to have a spirit instantly came out of his palm and chased into the hole. It chased deep underground at an extremely fast speed. Let's go. Emolian held his wife's small hand and squeezed it gently. This Bai must have something to rely on if he dared to come here and cause trouble so presumptuously. Who did he think a broken array could trap? The Crown Prince's eyes were cold. He picked up his wife and swayed lightly. A hole suddenly appeared in the void in front of them. The two of them disappeared without a trace. On the other side, Bai and his group were like stray dogs as they passed through the secret underground passage. The dozens of Heavenly Fate disciples behind them screamed in horror. They scrambled out of the secret passage with Bai's deputy hall master. Those who were slow were immediately devoured by the spiritual black fire behind them. Buye's pupils constricted as he watched the disciples turn into a pile of ashes under the burning of the black fire. The black fire spread instantly. The disciples of the Heavenly Fate sect retreated in fear. Suddenly, 2 flying swords pierced through the clouds and the moon, flying straight to Buye. The latter hurriedly swung his sword to block one of the swords and pulled a Heavenly Fate disciple in front of him. The sword pierced through the disciple's heart with a soft sound. The latter did not even have the chance to make a sound before he died, and was immediately used as a scapegoat. The long sword that had pierced into the chest of the unlucky bastard made a soft clang sound. Suddenly the sword was lifted and flew backwards. Buye raised his head, his pupils constricting. The sword fell into the hands of a smiling man dressed in red. It was the venerable immortal by Emolien's side. They came so quickly. Buye subconsciously took a step back. His eyes narrowed as he tightened his grip on the sword in his hand. Vice Hall Master. A Heavenly Fate disciple beside him looked at him in surprise. Bai turned his head and nodded slightly at him. The Heavenly Fate disciple took out something from his inner world and threw it into the air. A flying spiritual artifact suddenly formed. Buye was the first to escape. He had just leaped into the air when he saw a green vine wrap around his feet. The vines grew rapidly and in a flash they wrapped around Bai's arms and shoulders, tying him up from head to toe. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal chuckled. He guided a wisp of wood spirit with his fingertips. With a slight tug, Yi was pulled down from the air. Chapter 43-33. Brother, where do you want to go? Vice Hall Master. Vice Hall Master. Bai shook his bound body and glared at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and Holy Sun Mi Yen with fiery eyes. Vice Hall Master? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal sized up the person in front of him. What makes you think you can really catch a rabbit by waiting for a rabbit by a tree stump? Perhaps what you catch just so happens to be a tiger or a wolf. Ripping waves came from the air. Bai's eyes flickered. He looked up and saw a slender palm appear out of thin air in front of him. In the blink of an eye, Prince Mo passed through the air with the little stoic in his arms and landed in front of everyone. His phoenix eyes stared icily at Bai. In that instant, Bai felt like he was being targeted by a ferocious beast and he felt unwell. Breaking through the air and coming out. The power to annihilate nothingness. The crown prince of the divine province actually had such terrifying power? Why didn't anyone in the entire Tianyun sect mention this before? How many times had they interacted with the crown prince? There was no way they didn't know that the crown prince had such a powerful and unique ability. Sir Jojo expressionlessly looked at the person in front of him and patted Prince Mo's neck, indicating for him to put him down. Mo Lien looked at her in amusement before loosening his grip and letting her go. Arbor slowly walked to Bai with a cold expression. He drew out a clap of thunder and slowly aimed it at the other party. You're allowed to leave behind your last words. Feng Changqing and the others found Long Qian, Long Shangyun, and Qing Shueshue in the shattered stone formation. They had just rushed over when they heard the little stoic say this coldly. You're allowed to leave behind your last words? You're allowed to leave behind your last words? Why the heck did he feel that this icy little stoic was a bit inexplicably adorable? You dare to kill me? Bai couldn't resist sneering. Do you know the consequences of killing me? Since you don't have any last words, then die. Arbor pointed, and the clap of thunder whistled through the air and shot toward Bai's neck without hesitation. Bai stared in shock at the person in front of him. He probably didn't expect this stoic face to be so resolute and kill him without a second word. In reality, the little stoic's current state of mind wasn't very calm either. When she looked at the person in front of her, there was a voice in her heart that kept telling her, "Enemy, enemy, kill him. Don't talk nonsense with him, kill him immediately." Although he wanted to figure out some things in his heart, for example, did he really have any interactions with Bai in his previous life? For example, did something happen between him and this person in his previous life? But at this moment, when she was truly facing this person, she really didn't want to ask or care about anything. She just wanted to get rid of this big trouble. Chi, with a soft sound, a flying sword suddenly drilled out in front of Bai and quickly split apart Arbor's thunder sword. Sudden thunder shook and was summoned back to Arbor's hand, clasping it between his fingers. She leaped into the air, ice crystals and water spirits emerging from her hands. They rustled like flying blades as they rushed towards Yi. Wait, stop. Yi suddenly realized that the stoic face in front of him wasn't joking with him. She really wanted to kill him. So when she asked him if he had any last words, it really was the truth and not a joke like other people. What right do you have to tell me to stop? Arbor glanced at him coldly. Although she didn't say anything, Yi could clearly read the deep meaning in her cold eyes. Chapter 43-34. Don't you want to know who the mastermind behind Tianyun is? Arbor's eyes were mocking and her lips curled. You know? Of course I know. Arbor stared icily at her, her entire body's water spiritual energy ready to be unleashed. Everyone saw a waterfall-like water curtain slowly rise behind her, which instantly solidified into an ice surface resembling an iron plate. Long Shangyun's gaze flickered, and a thought spun in her mind. The little stoic's control over the power of the five spirits had probably already reached the pinnacle of perfection. Someone about to die is merely spouting nonsense. Arbor raised her sword, and a rainbow-like sword light rapidly cut through the ice wall behind her. In less than a moment, everyone saw the ice surface crumble and transform into countless sharp ice spikes aimed directly at Yi. Yi's entire body was bound by the vines guided by the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, and he simply couldn't struggle free. When he saw the little stoic pointing countless ice spikes at him like an arrow on a bowstring, he instantly started to panic. I know, I can tell you, but you must. Before Yi could finish speaking, he saw the stoic face wave her hand, and countless ice spikes abruptly stabbed at him from head to toe. Yi struggled and jumped back in a panic. He used his divine perception to guide his flying sword and slashed several ice spikes back and forth in front of him. However, he quickly discovered that there was practically no end to those ice spikes. Countless densely packed ice spikes gathered in one place and directly nailed his flying sword to the ground. The remaining hundreds to thousands of ice spikes were like locusts passing through, swarming through his limbs and bones with clanging sounds. Buyez's entire body was corroded by the cold air, and he was rooted to the spot in a daze. Everyone clearly saw the berserk power of the sacred water scuttling back and forth in his body, wantonly destroying his dantian and meridians. In a flash, the cold air spread from Buyez's hair to his eyebrows, eyes, nose and mouth, all the way down to the soles of his feet. Within minutes, his entire person turned into a transparent crystal-like ice sculpture. The fear in his eyes could still be seen through the ice. His mouth was slightly agape and his eyeballs were bulging out of their sockets. The panicked expression on his face was completely exposed. Damn liar. Arbor looked at him coldly. A mere vice hall master of a small branch of the Heavenly Fate Organization dared to claim that he knew who the mastermind behind the Heavenly Fate Organization was? You want to lie to Jojo again? You're spouting too much nonsense. Go to hell. Arbor stretched out his hand and clenched his fist. In a split second, the ice sculpture with its mouth slightly open suddenly broke apart into 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 pieces and fell to the ground. Long Shangyun's pupils shrank. Qing Heis, who was behind him, sucked in a breath of cold air and took a few steps back. When she raised her eyes again, she looked at Arbor with a hint of fear in her eyes. Arbor was a little too frightening. Tearing a person into pieces just because of a disagreement, wasn't this method a bit too terrifying? Qing Shueshue turned back to look at Qing Hongsa. She frowned and couldn't help but sneer. Third sister, you can't be thinking that this person is pitiful, right? He's a disciple of the Heavenly Fate Organization who doesn't shrink from any evil. Wasn't this third sister too naive? At this time, could it be that the long-lost Virgin Mary heart was acting up? Don't look at this Vice Hall Master Bouilly in front of her. His face was very delicate and he seemed harmless. But as the Vice Hall Master of the Heavenly Fate Organization, what good could he do on a daily basis? How many people had died at the hands of the Heavenly Fate Organization? Chapter 43-35. Furthermore, not long ago, their entire devastating island had collapsed and sunk to the bottom of the sea because of Tianyun's attack. Deep hatred was right in front of them. What kind of expression was Third Sister's? She actually acted up at this time. It was truly laughable. Qing Hongsa also seemed to feel that her expression just now was a little too much. She hurriedly restrained her expression and said stubbornly, I don't sympathize with Tianyun's people. Qing Shueshue glanced at her again and faintly lowered her eyes. Third sister, the moment Tianyun wiped out our home, the hatred between us and them became irreconcilable. Seeing that the surrounding air was quiet and no one spoke, Long Qinglong couldn't help but laugh. Long Huan could not help but clear his throat, then chuckled awkwardly and said, Just now, our brothers from the Phoenix clan have cleaned up all the corpse puppets in the stone formation. We've already checked the surroundings. There are no more corpse puppets left. Long Shangyun said, Since that's the case, let's leave now. Hurry up and let her board the Crimson Firmament Blue Wave ship to take a comfortable bath and sleep. She really didn't want to move a single finger. Just now, she had killed so many corpse puppets in Stone Town that her hands were almost sore. She originally wanted to rest on the island, but in the end she had to fight again. How tiring. Long Qing also nodded but quietly glanced at Sir Jojo and said, although this place has already become an abandoned deserted island, everyone is also very tired after fighting for so long. In my opinion, why don't we return to the village and find a slightly cleaner house to stay for the night and rest? We'll set off tomorrow morning. They originally came to this island to rest. Now that they came up and fought, not only did they not rest, they were even more tired. Big brother, you? Long Shangyun looked at Long Qing strangely. When did Big Brother become so silly and adorable? Wasn't it better to rest on the Crimson Firmament Blue Wave? The Crimson Firmament Blue Wave ship moved steadily as if it was on flat land. It didn't make people feel bumpy at all. The space on the ship was different. There were many rooms. Just randomly picking one would be very comfortable. Why did they have to find a place to stay on this lousy island? Wasn't this superfluous? Arbor turned around and looked at everyone's pale faces. His gaze shifted to young Master Long's travel-worn face. Go rest on the red firmament blue waves. She glanced at him and said expressionlessly, I won't charge you. Young Master Long heaved a sigh of relief as though he had been granted amnesty. His eyes revealed traces of a smile as he cupped his hands towards Arbor and thanked her. Many thanks for cousin's generosity. What were they waiting for? Let's set off quickly. Long Shangyun, damn, so Big Brother was retreating in order to advance. Damn, she was wondering why Big Brother was so stupid. It turned out that he had learned to be smart. Qing Hongsa tugged on Qing Shueshue's sleeve. Shueshue, what are they talking about? What scarlet firmament blue waves? Where are they going to rest? Why did the Long siblings look so happy and excited? Arbor took out the sealing ball from his inner world and casually tossed it to the sea. Everyone saw a 3-story ship riding the wind and breaking the waves as it sailed down the river, creating a series of huge waves. The entire ship sank several feet into the sea and came to a steady stop. Let's go. Long Shangyun waved at Qing Shueshue excitedly. Following Arbor and the others, they flew towards the crimson firmament blue wave. Great, they finally got rid of that lousy ship. They didn't have to sleep on the ground and on haystacks every day. Their backs were sore from sleeping. Yo yo yo, the future was promising. Chapter 43-36. This night had been too comfortable. After being tossed about on the dilapidated ship for so many days and suddenly returning to a sacred weapon like the crimson firmament blue wave, she suddenly felt that this treatment and benefits simply couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. After a good night's sleep, Long Shangyun walked up to the deck to breathe in the fresh air and couldn't resist stretching. When she turned around, she saw 2 tall and handsome men, one in red and one in white, walking down the spiral staircase. For a moment, she felt that nothing in the world was more beautiful than this. The man in red leaned against the railing and chuckled with a wine pot in his hand. The man in white was like a holy light shining on all things, and his expression was aloof. As the 2 people's eyes swirled, it was as if a myriad of afterlights were flowing down. The myriad colors in the world were all gathered around this damn stoic. Long Shangyun took a bite of the dried bun in her hand. Her nose twitched and she smelled the fragrance of clear porridge. She walked forward without stopping and hastily followed the scent. Then she saw an expressionless face in a moon-white robe appear in front of her. What are you doing? As expected, the little stoic immediately hollered at her. Long Shangyun speechlessly rolled her eyes, but her gaze followed the large pot of porridge in the little stoic's hand. Washing my hands. The little stoic glanced at her disdainfully and walked past her. Long Shangyun turned around and bared her teeth at the little stoic's back. This damn stoic, can't you speak properly? Before long, the 100 members of the Feng tribe and Qing Shueshue's 300 personal guards all came out. Everyone suddenly realized that this space was truly very interesting. This deck didn't look very big, but it didn't feel crowded even with more than 400 people squeezed together. The surroundings were still empty. We'll see the snowy ridge if we continue forward. Long Huan said to Arbor with a smile. Cousin, are you going to look for senior fine light of the snowy ridge sacred land now? Arbor shook her head. Let nature take its course. She had already given the remaining nameplates of the Xuanji school's first-generation disciples to seniors Qin Qi and Lu Zheng. Without nameplates, it would be troublesome. In any case, this matter wasn't urgent. It had been so many years, so why be impatient? All right, then let's not stay here any longer and enter the river of forgetfulness directly. Long Huan sighed. Speaking of which, we've wasted quite a bit of time on this journey. Xiao Mu glanced back slightly and calmly glanced at him before retracting her gaze. Cousin, don't worry. The River of Forgetfulness Dragon Clan has no ill intentions towards you. Long Huan hurriedly said, besides, grandmother really wants to meet you. Arbor didn't say anything. He put down the bowl of porridge, got up and walked to the railing. Crown Prince Mo faintly swept Long Huan a glance. Seriously, Long Huan could sense the dense warning in the Crown Prince's eyes even through the air. He had seen a lot along the way. For someone like the Crown Prince who loved his wife as much as his life, if the Dragon Clan of Wangchuan really did anything harmful to the little stoic, the Crown Prince would probably uproot the entire Wangchuan. Between the 2 of them, there was no need to say anything, but everything was expressed in silence. It was truly worthy of envy. Long Huan shook his head slightly and calmly looked back at the Crown Prince, nodding at him. Mo Lien glanced at him before retracting his gaze and walking towards his wife's side. If Long Huan could behave himself, he naturally wouldn't touch their family. If the River of Forgetfulness Dragon Clan had ulterior motives and wanted to harm his Qiao, how could he treat them courteously? He naturally had to protect his wife to the end. Chapter 43-37. On the vast sea, a fast ship was heading towards the depths of the River of Forgetfulness. The ship had been circling around the snowy mountains for many days, but it still hadn't found the place where the people of the River of Forgetfulness lived. What's going on? There's no island here. Could it be that the River of Forgetfulness Dragon Clan and their clansmen are all gathered in the snowy mountains? After searching for a few days without finding the entrance, was already very impatient. Mu Rochuan stood on the deck and looked at the sea in the distance, not saying anything for a long time. Eldest Miss, what do you think? Sighed and suppressed her temper to ask. After interacting with this Eldest Miss for a while, realized that this Eldest Miss's personality was too stuffy. Basically, if she didn't ask her or talk to her, she could be stuffy for a few days without making a sound. Of course, didn't know that this dull Eldest Miss used to be in high spirits and was quite confident in her eloquence. If Mu Rochuan stood in front of Mu Xingqian and Arbor now, the two siblings would probably be shocked. Her change was too great. Eldest Mississippi Hong Chang led the two of them over and cupped his hands slightly towards Mu Rochuan. After interacting with her for a while, Hong Chang was somewhat convinced by this Eldest Mississippi. At first, he and both felt that this Eldest Miss with no cultivation was simply causing trouble here. But gradually, they also realized that this unusually calm Eldest Miss was very much like their hall master. Her intelligence was also not below that of their hall master. How is it? Mu Rochuan asked softly. Deputy Hall Master Bai has brought people to Fisherman's Island for many days. Normally they should be back by now, but Mu Rochuan couldn't help but sneer. Just send a message back and ask the people in the main hall to take a look at their life lanterns. Hong Chang was stunned and said with a solemn expression, Eldest Miss means that Bai and the others are already dead? Isn't this a very normal thing? Mu Rochuan said indifferently, before you attacked them, did you ever find out how many deity realm experts and transcendent realm experts there were by Mu Qiao's side? I really admire Deputy Hall Master Bai's courage. But at the same time, I'm also worried about his intelligence. Mu Rochuan faintly said, he does whatever his master tells him to do. What a brainless dog. Although I don't know how the Hall Master of the Hidden Moon Hall came to have enmity with Mu Qiao. But he's so naive. I feel that he's not qualified to be the master of the Hidden Moon Hall. Young miss, please be careful with your words. Hong Chang hurriedly bowed and said. Within Tianyun there was a very strict hierarchy. As a subordinate he was not allowed to talk about whether his superior was right or wrong. This was absolutely unacceptable. Mu Rochuan shut her mouth with a cold expression. She turned her head and continued to look at the distant sea. I'll send a message to the main hall right away, Hong Chang added, then left with his men. He glanced at him, frowned and said to Mu Rochuan, Eldest Miss, the most important thing for us now is to find the entrance to the River of Forgetfulness. As for other matters we can put them aside for now. Although Deputy Hall Master Bai's death was regrettable, it was not the most important thing at the moment. Enter the River of Forgetfulness? Mu Rochuan's face revealed a mysterious smile. Isn't the River of Forgetfulness already there? Chapter 43-38. But even though this place is within the boundaries of the River of Forgetfulness, if we go in suddenly stopped speaking. Her gaze changed slightly as she looked towards Mu Roxian. The latter's gaze remained fixed on the calm sea, not moving at all. Was a smart person. With a flash of insight, she couldn't help but exclaim, Eldest Miss, you mean that the entrance to the River of Forgetfulness is here? Are there any cultivators below the spirit realm here? So, please step out. Those below spirit realm do not have any protection and it is very difficult to enter the River of Forgetfulness. Jia. On the deck of the boat Long Chen asked. His voice was very calm and did not show any disdain. He was just stating a fact. Everyone looked at each other. No one moved at all. It seemed that Qing Shueshue's 300 personal guards were all above spirit realm. All right. Long Chen nodded. How many people here cultivate water spirit? Please stand to the left. Immediately, many people walked to the left side and looked in Long Huan's direction. Those who cultivate water spirit, even if they cannot cultivate a water spirit barrier, they can use a water barrier to block off the water when they enter, Long Chen said with a serious expression. I only have 100 water avoidance pearls here. Distribute them to those who need them. Long Chen took out the water avoidance pearls from his inner world and gave them to his personal guards. Mainly those who cultivate fire spirit and lightning spirit need them. Put the water avoidance pearls in your mouth. Your fire spirit defense and lightning spirit defense are completely useless in the water. Especially lightning spirit, be careful that the defense is useless and you will die from the electricity flowing through the water. Everyone's mouths twitched as they looked silently at the lightning spirit Xiozha. The latter looked at each other with pale faces. So, the entrance to the River of Forgetfulness is under the sea? Feng Zhangfei ran to the railing and looked down at the calm sea. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Do we have to dive into the deep sea?" "Yes." Long Qian nodded. "So without a water spirit barrier, it is very hard to dive into the deep sea. The distance is very deep, it will take about 2 hours. So if everyone has defensive Ling artifacts, you can continue to prepare. Remember to bring enough medicine and replenish your spiritual energy at all times. After all, activating a defensive spiritual artifact also consumes spiritual energy. As for Mo Lien, He Qin, Holy Sun Mi Yen, these transcendent realm experts, Long Huan naturally did not need to worry too much. With his saint energy, even if he were to dive for a few days and nights, it would not be much of a problem." Sir Jojo moved his hands and feet. He looked down at the calm sea and looked at Long Hua with a questioning gaze. "Shall we?" Long Yun nodded. "Everyone follow behind us. Be careful." Hua. Long Shi and Long Shangyun looked at each other and both of them transformed their fishtails and dove into the water. Wah wah. The sound of people jumping into the water rang out one after another. Everyone jumped into the sea with all their might and sank into the waves with their heads covered. Spiritual energy barriers of various colors slowly lit up around their bodies, wrapping around them. Splash. Arbor sank into the water as if it had returned to its mother's embrace. He stretched his limbs with a comfortable expression, and with a casual movement, his body shot out a distance. Feng Zhangqing and the others who followed her into the water suddenly widened their eyes in surprise. Everyone looked back and saw that the little girl was like a flexible fish, swimming away with the current in an instant. Mo Lien. "Wife, come back." Chapter 43-39. Wife, hurry up and come back. Why was she so nimble like a fish once she entered the water? Even the Dragon Clan clansmen who had fish tails to assist them in paddling weren't like his wife, who could swim such a long distance in an instant. She kicked her legs twice as if she was about to completely disappear from his sight. Seeing that his wife was getting further and further away from him, this fellow couldn't help but feel anxious. He hurriedly transmitted his voice to Sir Jojo in the water. "Wife, hurry and come back." The heavens truly took pity on them. With his and Hu Jinshan's cultivation, they actually couldn't catch up to Sir Jojo in the water. They could only watch helplessly as she dashed out. Yes, she was dashing. How was his Jojo swimming in the water? She was simply kicking her legs and dashing forward for a long distance as if she was walking on flat ground. How could Sir Jojo know that once she entered the water, she was like a runaway wild horse, dashing out for a long distance? When she heard her husband's voice transmission, she turned her head and looked dumbfoundedly at Mo Lien and the others who were far away from her. Why was her husband so far away from her? Why were they dawdling like this? Why weren't they hurrying to catch up? Didn't they say that the entrance to the River of Forgetfulness was underwater? What were Long Ji and Long Shangyun doing? Why were they dawdling behind? Why weren't they leading the way? Countless questions rapidly popped up in Sir Jojo's head, but she promptly swept them out of her mind. Husband Jojo is coming. The little stoic hastily kicked her legs and dashed back to Mo Lien, Hu Jinshan and the others. Splash splash splash, splash splash, everyone could see clearly now. This stoic girl casually kicked her legs in the water and dashed over 100 feet like an arrow. In less than a few seconds she had already turned back. Long Shangyun's eyes bulged in shock. Her long, gliding fishtail stood upright in the water as she turned to look at her brother, who had an equally astonished expression. The little stoic's paddling speed is clearly superior to the fastest and strongest divers among the merfolk. The siblings exchanged a glance and criticized in their hearts at the same time. "Husband, why are you so slow?" Mr. Jojo quickly returned to Mo Lien's side. He reached out and hooked his arm around Mo Lien's arm. He looked at him from head to toe. Did something happen? Everyone looked at her with different expressions. A young man from the Phoenix clan who had a water-repelling pearl in his mouth and couldn't speak, raised his hand and pointed at Arbor's mouth. Heavens, as expected of their saintess. After entering the water, you don't need any water barriers to defend yourself. You can easily open your mouth and speak in the water just like on land. Only then did Arbor realize that those who had the water avoidance pearl in their mouths could not speak. As for those that were able to speak, they were only able to do so through the defensive barrier. Mo Lien, He Qin, Holy Sun Mi Yen, and others rely on their high cultivation so they don't need to open any water barriers after entering the water. However, their speed in the water is obviously not as fast as on land. If it is not necessary, they will not speak. If they want to speak, they will probably still need to use a water barrier to create a small space. Arbor blinked and smoothly swam in front of Long Shangyun and Long Hua. She looked at their mutated fishtails and then swept a glance at the Dragon Clan clansmen with mutated fishtails following behind them. After the Dragon Clan clansmen mutated their fishtails, they could swim freely in the water like fish without any hindrance. Chapter 4340. Isn't this normal? I have the blood of my mother's Long family in me. Just like these mermen with mutated fish tails, I can swim freely in the water. Arbor thought to herself. She stomped her feet nonchalantly and returned to her husband's side. Long Qian stared at her deeply. Normal? No, this wasn't normal at all. When they were ordinary people, they would still feel the water pressure when they entered the sea. If they didn't have any protective measures, they wouldn't be able to breathe smoothly in the water. Only after they mutated their fish tails and transformed into mermen could they breathe and speak freely in the water. Arbor, however, entered the water alone. Without any barriers, she could easily run back and forth in the water. She could breathe and speak without any obstruction. How could this be normal? Long Yun took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He turned around and looked at his sister. Both of them nodded. Everyone follow. Long Qian swayed his body and dove into the deep sea with his sister. While hanging onto her husband's arm, Xiaomu wriggled her limbs and pulled down the water droplets before grabbing Emolien's hand. With a kick of her leg, she pulled Emolien along and chased after the Long siblings. Prince Emo was stunned. He suddenly felt his body lighten as if the water pressure around him had disappeared. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. He was already being pulled by his wife. They dove down without any obstruction. The others quickly followed. They used all their strength to dive down and shorten the distance between them and the Long family members in front. Emolien only realized how fast Jojo could move in the water after she was pulled by Jojo. She was able to drag a grown man like him so easily and effortlessly. With a casual kick of her legs, she was able to drag him down at least a few dozen feet. They quickly caught up with Long Shangyun, Long Qian, and the others who were leading the way. Still down there? Arbor kicked the water away and turned to look at Long Qian, who had a strange expression on his face. Young Master Long felt that his impression of his cousin was about to be refreshed again. This wasn't abnormal at all, it was extremely abnormal. The little stoic stood gracefully in the water. Her white robes rippled slightly in the water, and her black hair drifted gracefully. Her cold little face, separated by the blue water curtain, appeared to be very red. Although she was in the water, the strange thing was that there was not a trace of water around her. It was not an exaggeration to say that she had completely merged into the water. This attitude was too carefree and unrestrained. It was as if the surrounding seawater was nothing to her. There was no water pressure, and it did not hinder her movements or speech at all. Why aren't you saying anything? The little stoic knitted her brows and looked at Long Huan and his sister, who had strange expressions. Ever since the siblings entered the water, they seemed a little strange. When he asked them questions, they didn't open their mouths. He really didn't know what they were thinking. Could it be that he had relapsed and was trying to trick Jojo? Jojo looked at the two of them warily and continued to hold her husband's hand as they dived down. I'll go first. After saying that, he pulled Emolien and kicked off the water. They immediately sank several dozen feet and continued to swim forward. Feng Zhangfei looked back at Feng Zhangqing with a strange expression and asked with his eyes, how could the holy maiden swim so fast? How could Feng Changqing know this? He could only reply with a I don't know look and pointed at his younger brother's head. Chapter 43-41. At this moment they were diving deeper and deeper, and could already feel the heavy water pressure coming from all directions. Even though they were in the God realm, they had to activate the godly armor or the barrier to protect their heads. Feng Zhangfei understood what his brother meant. He immediately waved his hand to create a godly armor and protective helmet to cover his head, leaving only his eyes exposed. Feng Changqing couldn't help but twitch his mouth. His brother's current appearance was simply he didn't know how ugly he looked swimming in the water with a weird helmet. What's that? Be careful. Be careful. It's coming. The sound of water splashing could be heard. The crowd burst into exclamations. Feng Changqing looked back and hurriedly pushed his brother Feng Zhangfei away. When the two of them suddenly separated, a great white sawtooth shark slid quickly between them. The great white sawtooth shark was about the size of 3 to 5 adults, but it swam very fast in the water. In the blink of an eye, it made its way into the crowd. It opened its mouth and swallowed 2 of Qing Shui's maids. Its teeth were as sharp as knives and axes. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them were chopped into pieces. Oh my god, is that a mutant zombie shark? No, it's not mutant. It's just run. A divine beast. It's a divine beast. Damn, how can a divine beast level sawtooth shark appear in such a place? In front of a divine beast, even God Realm masters of the same level could only bow their heads and accept their fate, let alone Spirit Realm cultivators. Qing Shueshue shouted anxiously, "Get out of the way! Go. Do you want to die? Go." Qing Hongsa subconsciously grabbed Qing Shueshue's hand and pulled her away from the shark's attack range. In the water, Hu Shurchen gestured to the Phoenix clansmen to disperse. Feng Changqing and the others hurriedly spread out and summoned weapons from their consciousness to hold in their hands. The great white sawtooth shark was unstoppable. After biting 3 to 5 people to death, it suddenly turned around in the water and swam quickly toward Qing Shueshue and her sister not far away. This great white sawtooth shark is faster than anyone in the water. Everyone, get into formation. Surround it and attack from a distance. A female attendant who was still commanding the formation watched as the sawtooth white shark rushed over against the wind and waves. She didn't have time to dodge at all and was bitten in half at the waist. Disperse quickly. Qing Shueshue was so anxious that her eyes turned red. Under his agitation, the water barrier in front of him started to churn rapidly due to his emotions. It even showed signs of breaking. Damn it, she didn't expect that in just a few moves, dozens of her subordinates had already been killed by this great white. This sawtooth white shark had already developed intelligence and knew to pick the soft persimmons to pinch. It always attacked the female attendants below the 7th level of the spirit realm. It completely ignored Hu Shurchen, Holy Sun Mi Yen and the others. Ma Shurchen and Mi Yen wanted to catch up and restrain him, but their speed was no match for him. He threw out several wood spirits in an attempt to restrain it, but it was as fast as an arrow, and it brushed past him repeatedly. This sawtooth white shark was sly and cunning. It never went near He Chen and the others. When it saw He Chen and Holy Sun Mi Yen, it would run far away. It was truly infuriating. The sawtooth white shark was like a water spirit that toyed with the human world. It had chosen to play with them. With a wave of its tail, it shot in Feng Zhangfei's direction like lightning. Feng Zhangfei's handsome face was a bit stifled. As he flew backwards, he hurriedly mobilized the wood spirits to protect himself. Chapter 43-42. Crack. The sawtooth white shark bit down on his long sword with a ferocious glint in its eyes. It bit a few times but it couldn't bite his sword in half. However, the sword was like a toothpick stuck between the rows of sawteeth. Feng Zhangfei held the sword in his hand, and his body swayed back and forth in the water. With his sword held in the mouth by that ferocious sawtooth white shark, his body rose into the air, creating splashes in the water. Zhangfei. Feng Zhangqing and a few other Feng clansmen hastily drew close, and several wood spirit restraints clung onto the sawtooth white shark's body. However, the sawtooth white shark broke free of those wood spirit restraints in no more than a few seconds. The sawtooth white shark spat out waves of icy spikes, which instantly spread out in a fan-shaped arc. The crowd in front swiftly retreated, and the dozen or so female attendants who couldn't dodge in time were instantly pierced through by the ice spikes. Qing Shueshue's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as she bellowed, "Quick! Quickly hide behind me." Holy Sun Mi Yen grasped a sharp blade made of ice and snow and swung it at the sawtooth white shark's head. However, the sawtooth white shark's speed was too fast. With a dodge, it dragged Feng Zhangfei, who was hanging on its long sword, and dashed more than a dozen meters away. Its small, sinister eyes revealed a trace of smugness. It turned its head and opened its mouth, wanting to spit out a water arrow to kill Feng Zhangfei, who was hanging under its teeth. Suddenly, it saw a tiny fish swimming to its side. What was this thing that was so small and so fast? Set up the formation. Arbor blinked and casually tossed out several dozen jade talismans. He set up a confinement talisman formation in the water, which instantly enveloped the sawtooth white shark. The little stoic kicked her legs and rapidly shot in front of the sawtooth white shark like an arrow. She brandished a thunderclap in her hand and directly slashed at the white shark. Thousand Thunder Mirage. Several thousand bolts of lightning interweaved into one and swooped down on the white shark. Even Yuan Shurchen, who had always been calm, couldn't help but twitch his mouth and change his expression. Dodge. With a flick of his finger, wood spirit walls spread out from his body and merged with the water spirit walls that Holy Sun Mi Yen slapped out, forming an enormous defensive shield in the water. 10,000, what the fuck, ran through everyone's minds. The 1,000 lightning phantoms that the little girl threw out flashed and rumbled in the sea. The lightning chased after the water and scattered in all directions. It conducted electricity indiscriminately and flowed to the surrounding people. Crackle. Crackle, everyone's forehead twitched. Through the large defensive barrier, they could see countless electric currents flickering and crackling. It was as if there were electric whips directly lashing their bodies. It was inexplicably terrifying. How could they break through it? Long Shi and Long Shangyun used all their strength to barely keep up with the little girl's speed. At this moment he was also blocked outside the defensive shield set up by the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and Holy Sun Mi Yen. Looking through the water and wood defense, he saw the little stoic raise the thunderclap sword and fiercely attack the white sawtooth shark in front of her. In the chaos just now, Feng Zhangfei, who was originally hanging between the teeth of the sawtooth white shark, had completely disappeared. Feng Changqing couldn't help but sigh in relief. If her little brother, that idiot, was still hanging on the sawtooth white shark's teeth, perhaps he would be the first one to be electrocuted until he was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. The little girl's speed was so fast that it made people click their tongues in wonder. Originally, even the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and Holy Sun Mi Yen were helpless in front of the white shark's valiant speed. But now it really was extremely unlucky. Chapter 43-43. This white sawtooth shark truly had 8 lifetimes of bad luck for encountering the little girl. Previously it could bite many people in half with one bite, but now it was trapped in the little girl's confinement talisman matrix. No matter where it fled to, it simply couldn't escape from her grasp. Even though this fellow forcefully tugged at the confinement talisman matrix to swim in the water, its speed still couldn't compare to the little stoic's. The little stoic was running haphazardly. She was sprinting around in the water, not swimming at all. She caught up to the white shark in a flash and raised her sword. Electricity shot out along the seawater, electrocuting that white sawtooth shark and causing it to roll several times in front of the little stoic. 10,000 horses galloped through everyone's hearts. They felt like there were no other words to describe this indescribable and strange situation. The little stoic was too frightening. This white sawtooth shark that looked so full of itself just now couldn't escape from her grasp at all. No matter how they looked at it, it felt sullen. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal floated and finally controlled his direction in the water with great difficulty and floated to Emolien's side. Glancing askance at him, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal reached out to lightly touch Emolien's arm and asked with his eyes, "Where did you swim to just now?" Emolien turned his head and gazed at him strangely. "You might not believe it, but Qiao Qiao had already dived several hundred feet down while dragging me. If he hadn't heard the gasps from above, how could Jojo have pulled him back? Why were you so fast?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal continued to ask while looking at Emolien strangely. "How would I know?" Prince Emo gruffly threw him a, "You know what you mean" look. He turned to look to the side and saw that fellow Mi Yen was also floating over while flopping in the water. Mi Yen pointed in the little stoic's direction and then pointed at Long Ji and Long Shangyun. When the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal saw him pointing here and there, he couldn't resist slapping his hand away in annoyance and said, "It's not like you can't speak. Why are you pointing at the sky and the earth?" After saying that, he pinched out a wisp of holy power from his fingertips and set up a water barrier around the three of them. Holy Sun Mi Yen stared blankly for a moment before letting out a long sigh. "Phew, it's so uncomfortable. How much longer do we have to dive?" Floating in the water all the time was really not a good thing. Let's see what young Lord Long has to say. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal glanced at Long Shi. The latter's eyes were focused on Arbor. No one knew what he was thinking, but he seemed to be in a trance. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could not help raising his eyebrows. Long Shangyun was also a little stunned at this moment. Arbor was playing with the white shark for a long time. The unlucky shark was electrocuted to the brink of death. Qiao Mu flew up and kicked its humongous body towards Emolien. Emolien, Ji-Chin, and Mi Yen hurriedly flung out several bursts of sacred energy, forcibly slicing the white sawtooth shark into several pieces. The little stoic swiftly darted over and grasped a divine beast core that flew out from the sawtooth white shark's body. She nodded in satisfaction. Enveloped in seawater, no one would detect anything unusual even if she summoned the 3 puppies from the star domain in front of other people. She was practically one with the seawater in all directions. Even if she suddenly disappeared in the sea, Long Shi and the others would probably only think that she was too fast and that her escape speed had far exceeded their visibility in the water. Woof woof woof. The 3 puppies happily pounced in the water. Chapter 43-44. The puppy in the middle opened its mouth and swallowed the crystal core of the white sawtooth shark. It chewed crisply and made crunching sounds. Everyone looked at that expressionless stoic face in horror. Especially Qing Shueshue's guards, who had no ability to resist the attack of the white sawtooth shark just now looked at the little crown princess in front of them as if they were looking at a god. Wasn't it a little too fierce? After Arbor put away the 3 puppies, she kicked her legs and flew to the stunned Qing Shueshue. How's the damage? Qing Shueshue's small face was a little bitter. She raised her hand and set up a water barrier in front of her. Then she said, about a dozen people died. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Arbor raised her hand and patted her shoulder. That white sawtooth shark is equivalent to a master in the 7th level of the divine realm. You are indeed no match for it. Especially in the sea, the difference in strength was too great. It was her fault. She was so happy when she entered the water that she couldn't find the edge. She pulled Emolien and dived down so fast that they were all left behind. Qing Shueshue smiled bitterly at her. They were weak. How could they blame others for this kind of thing? Sister Qiao, wait for me. I'll go over and count the number of people. We can leave right away. Arbor nodded. Qing Shueshue tried to stabilize herself and floated to those guards. Not long after, she swam back. There are more than 250 people left. Among them, 20 to 30 have minor injuries. They took hemostatic medicine and blood coagulation pills. It shouldn't be a big problem. It won't affect our progress. Long Chen nodded. In that case, let's continue diving. Arbor pointed to the front. Long Chen, you lead the way. Lien and I will bring up the rear. After experiencing a divine beast like the white sawtooth shark in the water, the guards around Qing Shueshue were a little nervous. Hearing Arbor's words, they couldn't help but look at her gratefully. They were the weakest in the team. Not only were they of no help to everyone, but they were also a burden. Let's go. Arbor waved his hand and asked Qing Shueshue and the others to follow Long Huan. She ran to Emolien's side and hugged his arm. Holding his finger, she dragged him to the end of the line. This time, she didn't wander around and obediently followed at the back of the group. She pulled Emolien and walked slowly as if she was strolling in the water. Emolien glanced at her from time to time. He suddenly felt that when the little girl dived down at such a slow speed, it was as if she was walking down a flight of stairs. She even pulled him down step by step. His Qiao was really an unimaginable little girl. Arbor held Emolien's hand as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. He walked for a while and tilted his head to look at him. What is it? You're a little unbelievable. Emolien patted her little head in amusement. He was pulled down by Jojo and could feel that there was no water pressure around them. Their breathing was normal and they could speak freely. He didn't need to activate any water barrier. It was as if there was a vacuum around them. Not a single drop of water could float to them. I think the land of the Forgotten River tribe is the unbelievable one, right? Arbor looked down and his eyes lit up. Jojo's Lien looked. A huge underwater city was rippling in the dense mist. It was like a mirage, dreamy but real. Chapter 43-45. At this time, Emolien also saw the dreamlike city underwater, and her eyes couldn't help but flicker. No wonder Long Huan was unwilling to bring the commoners of the Fisherman Island into the River of Forgetfulness. This was indeed very difficult. The River of Forgetfulness was not a place that any ordinary person could dive to. At this time they saw a city floating under the water, but in reality they were still quite far away from the city. Not to mention ordinary people, even ordinary spirit realm practitioners would have used up a lot of their spirit power after diving to this extent, and they would need to constantly replenish their spirit pills. Long Huan glanced back at the team behind him from time to time, taking in everyone's expressions. Other than Qing Shueshue, Qing Hongsa, and the female attendants who had weaker cultivation, Mu Xingqian and the youths of the Phoenix clan were diving down quite easily and did not see any discomfort. But Long Shangyun secretly glanced at Mu Xingqian, and then turned to look at her eldest brother. They knew very well that Mu Xingqian, who also had the bloodline of the Dragon clan, was in a completely different situation from Arbor. At this time, Mu Xingqian had not seen any discomfort in diving into the deep sea, most likely because of his strong cultivation base. An Arbor she was. The brother and sister looked at each other again, as if they could see a hint of boiling fanaticism in each other's eyes. Changfei, how are you? Feng Changqing looked strangely at his second brother beside him. Ever since his younger brother had appeared in the team in one piece, he could clearly feel that Changfei seemed to be absent-minded. I'm fine. Feng Changfei was stunned. His mind was still in the realm of all living things growing and peach blossoms filling the sky, and he had not yet recovered. He didn't expect the Holy Maiden to have such a magical thing as the divine domain with her? Could it be that the family's ancestral teachings were not groundless rumors? The ancestral teaching said that in the future, if a woman who could communicate with the phoenix tree without hindrance appeared, she would be the Holy Maiden of the clan, and would follow her to death. The old ancestor had such foresight? After all, to be able to follow someone who had a divine domain with her, it was obvious that her future was boundless. Feng Zhangqing reached out and patted him on the shoulder. It was really dangerous just now. Don't be so reckless in the future. Be careful. Feng Zhangfei nodded and secretly turned his head to look at Emo Lien and Arbor, who were at the end of the line. Prince Emo quickly noticed Feng Zhangfei's furtive gaze and unceremoniously glared back. What are you looking at? Don't think that I didn't notice you sneaking glances at me. Long Shi led the group further down. Along the way they encountered quite a number of schools of fish, including a small group of mutant zombie fish. Fortunately, after the sawtooth white shark incident, no one dared to let their guard down. They were constantly paying attention to their surroundings. This wave of corpse fish was quickly dealt with. At this moment, when everyone looked down again, they could clearly see the city at the bottom of the sea. The transparent spiral staircase was connected to the corridor of the city below. Everything was like a dream, as if it was rippling in the water. It was as if it was made of transparent ice crystals, sinking to the bottom of the sea and emitting a faint and soft halo. It turned out that the river of forgetfulness was so beautiful. Everyone's hearts were moved. They followed the spiral staircase down and arrived in front of a large stone wheel carved with mountains and rivers. When the tips of their feet stepped on the soft sand, everyone looked up and saw the blue ribbon-like seawater slowly rippling above their heads. Chapter 43-46. Wow! This is so miraculous. Everyone exclaimed in surprise as they looked up at the slowly flowing seawater above them. Seawater gathered on top of it and dense moisture filled the air. The surroundings were surrounded by a vast ocean. It was as if the swimming fish were sealed in a glass bottle. Through the hazy mist, they could see all kinds of fish swimming to and fro wantonly above them. Feng Changqing looked down at the stone roulette in front of him. Green pine stone patterns were carved on it, and all the mountains and rivers could be seen. This is a transportation formation? Such a large transportation formation. Such an ancient and enormous transportation formation could only be seen in ancient mystic realms. Unexpectedly, the river of forgetfulness had such an exquisite transportation formation. Long Huan coughed awkwardly at everyone. This transportation formation, this place can transport us to the entrance of the river of forgetfulness city, Long Shangyun interrupted. However, it requires a large amount of spirit stones. I think we should walk there. It's not very far. Long Shangyun glanced at her elder brother's awkward expression and hastily took over the conversation. The group of Feng clan youths silently looked back at Sir Jojo, who had landed steadily and walked over hand in hand with Prince Imo. What are you all standing around for? Arbor grumpily shouted. Everywhere was damp and her body felt uncomfortable. The little stoic lowered her head to look at her shoes that were covered in sand, and she furrowed her brows in disgust. Her husband understood her intentions and hastily said, Jojo, let's change into a new pair of shoes when we enter the city later. One with lotus flowers embroidered on it, Prince Imo added. The venerable peach blossom immortal couldn't hold it in and burst into laughter. Crown Prince Imo swept him a chilly glance, and the latter coughed lightly before promptly tensing up his handsome face in a deadpan manner. My lady saint, there's a large transportation formation here. A youth from the Feng clan grumbled. We need money to use it. Arbor stepped forward and looked down at the stone roulette. He expressionlessly pointed at the small line of words on it. You carved it? Long Huan looked at his cousin in confusion and shook his head. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is an ancient teleportation array. How could I have carved those small words? This must have been written by the formation grandmaster himself after he created this formation. Each teleportation costs 20 spirit stones. There was no limit to the number of people who could be teleported. And it's a one-way trip. Qing Shueshue couldn't help but exclaim, this is too much. Qing Hongsa curled her lips and looked at Long Hua. Hey, do you have to do this every time you enter the city? We usually walk there. Long Huan coughed and said. Qing Hongse shrugged her shoulders mockingly. Her eyes were clearly throwing him a popper, with a hint of mockery. Hey, what's with that look? Long Shangyun glared at King Hong's unhappily. It's not like we don't have money. It's just that that place isn't very far. We'll reach it after walking for a while. How long will it take? Almost. Just less than 4 hours. What? Qing Hong Se exclaimed. For a moment she thought there was something wrong with her ears. What the hell? 4 hours of walking? Why don't you go to heaven? Long Shangyun instantly felt extremely embarrassed. Her face flushed red and she said angrily, Why are you making such a fuss? Chapter 43-47. Our river of forgetfulness is like this, we can only walk. You're in the water, you can't use that flying spirit artifact. Long Shangyun stuttered as she was stared at strangely by the group. You think this is the land route? This is the bottom of the sea, it's the space under the sea. It's different from the land route. It's restricted to flying. And ordinary land beasts might not be able to adapt to this space under the sea. Everyone looked at her strangely. A dragon youth could not help but ask, Then why don't you summon a sea beast to carry us over? I don't have a sea beast. Long Shangyun flew into a rage out of humiliation. My flying bat, it's not like you haven't seen it before. See my ass. No sea beast. Everyone looked at her with a look that said, Why are you so lowly? Long Shangyun was about to explode in anger. Long Huan quickly grabbed her hand, coughed and said, That if there's no problem, follow. We'll set off now. About 4 hours we'll reach the city gate. That speaking of walking, it's not that far. Long Huan quickly added. Everyone, Sir Jojo looked at the siblings expressionlessly. Long Huan and Long Shangyun felt their hair stand on end from his gaze, and felt extremely guilty. What are you looking at? Long Shangyun flew into a rage out of humiliation. This spirit stone is not spirit coin. Do you know how much 20 spirit coins are? 20 spirit stones, that's 400,000 to 500,000 spirit coins. What kind of joke was this? One teleportation cost 400,000 to 500,000 spirit coins. Even if the River of Forgetfulness Dragon Clan was rich, they could not burn their money like this. Moreover, they had to go back and forth between the land route and the sea every 2 to 3 days. Could they use the expensive teleportation array every time? Long Huan was a little annoyed, because he realized that his cousin was looking at him and the dragon clansmen as if they were small and poor. Long Shangyun shouted in exasperation, Alright, stop talking nonsense, follow. Let's go. Arbor silently stood on the teleportation array. Mo Lien, He Qin, Mu Xingchen and Holy Sun Mi Yen quickly followed suit. The young men of the Phoenixes reacted quite quickly, and they all rushed into the battlefield. After entering the teleportation array, one would know. Even though the teleportation array was only the size of a wheel, there was a different teleportation space inside the array. Therefore, there was no limit to the number of participants. Could it be that this teleportation array can teleport people from an entire city? Of course not. I heard that this kind of ancient teleportation array can only teleport 100,000 people at most. That's already the upper limit. Oh, that's already pretty good. Long Shangyun and Long Huan quietly followed the team and entered the teleportation array. They were naturally willing to freeload off the teleportation array. Between the teleportation array and walking, only an idiot would choose the latter. Hearing the sound of the spirit stones falling into the center of the formation plate, everyone felt their hearts tremble. 20 spirit stones were equivalent to 400,000 to 500,000 spirit coins. Just like that, Lady Qiao Qiao spent the money for a single teleportation without even blinking. Long Shangyun glared at Arbor with some grief and indignation. This guy, he was obviously so rich, but in the beginning he cheated the siblings all day long and even stretched out his hand to ask them for ship fees. Chapter 43-48. No, the 20 spirit stones that Sir Jojo spent this time, wasn't it from them? Previously he had lost 50 million spirit coins to her. Then he had signed a bill for 70 million for the fairy fair. All these added up to more than 100 million spirit coins. 400,000 to 500,000? What was 400,000 to 500,000 spirit coins to Sir Jojo? What was that? Arbor threw down 20 spirit stones and led the group to the gate of Forgotten River City. Looking up at the crystal-colored gate of Forgotten River City, it was like a glacier palace, presented in front of her. Arbor let out a small sigh. Wow, so rich. Everyone, this city wall is made of ice crystals, it is sturdy and beautiful. Even if a group of beasts besieged the city, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to break this gate in a month. Arbor sighed and walked towards the gate with her little paws behind her back. She waved the bill in her hand. Remember to pay back the money as soon as you go back. Stop pretending to be poor. How poor could someone who could use so many ice crystals to decorate the city gate be? They were almost tricked by this pair of siblings again. Sir Jojo said with a cold face, 70 million spirit coins, plus 20 spirit stones for this teleportation. Not one less you have to pay by tomorrow. Otherwise, Sir Jojo could only form a temporary debt collection team and go to collect the debt. How bad would that be? Long Shangyun's feet slipped and she almost fell to the ground. She had an impulse to curse her ancestors. Did the ancestors of the Long family know that there was such a peerless weirdo among the younger generation? Long Qian smiled embarrassedly and grabbed his sister's hand. Shangyun, exhale, inhale, exhale. Yes, slow down your breathing. She couldn't possibly anger herself to the point of fainting, right? Long Qian felt that if he wanted to get along well with this cousin of his, he must not be stingy, he must be generous, and he must be willing to spend money. Sob, sob, sob. Why did it feel like all of these were for the sake of spending money? Long Shangyun was speechless. She took a deep breath and exhaled. Then she followed Long Shi to the city gate. The two merman guards naturally recognized young Master Long and Miss Long. Seeing this, they hurriedly bowed and saluted. No need to be so courteous. The two of them each took out a watercolored crystal card and waved it twice at the city gate. Everyone saw that the thin layer of enchantment that originally covered the city gate was slowly spreading to both sides like water ripples. A wide road paved with soft yellowish-brown sand appeared in the middle of the road. It wasn't crowded even when two cars were traveling side by side. The people walking in and out of the restaurants and tea shops on both sides of the road were all mermaids and mermen with fishtails. Strangely, when Arbor walked into this city made of ice crystals, he could feel an endless amount of water spirit energy boiling in his body. The little water child was chirping non-stop in her conscious. Master Silver, there are so many water spirits. There are water spirits everywhere. Quickly eat them. Alright, eat slowly. Don't be noisy. Arbor was getting a headache from the noise. The water spirit energy here was very dense. Naturally, she could feel it clearly. But strangely, in this group there were so many water spirit masters, but none of them felt as strange as her. Ever since she entered the river of forgetfulness and stepped into the depths of the sea, it was as if she had truly returned home. She felt a trace of desire from the depths of her heart. Water spirit, water spirit, water spirit. The water spirit here was so dense. It was as if she could use it all. Chapter 43-49. This was a very strange feeling of control. It was as if once she entered the depths of the sea abyss, she was the queen of the deep sea and could control everything here. This feeling? It was truly strange. Xiao Mu turned her small head and shuffled to her eldest brother's side with small steps. Big brother, how do you feel? I feel okay. Mu Xingchen looked dazedly at his younger sister. His younger sister must be worried about whether his body could adapt to the space in the deep sea. When he was walking in the sea abyss earlier, the deeper he went, the heavier his heart and lungs felt. Fortunately, he had many defensive spirit weapons and his own strength was passable, so he didn't encounter any problems along the way. After entering the underwater city this time, it was as if he had entered another dry space. He removed the defensive barrier around him and could walk freely, so there weren't any problems at all. The little stoic expressionlessly gestured with her small hands and looked seriously at her older brother. Big brother. Standing behind them, Emolien and Ma Shurchen couldn't help but facepalm. Why did it feel like this pair of siblings were talking like chickens and ducks? They were talking in two completely different worlds. Big brother, you don't feel anything? The little stoic gestured with her small hands again. Younger sister, let's not beat around the bush. What do you want to tell big brother? The Feng tribe youth on the side almost couldn't stifle his laughter. What was going on? Why did he feel like the little crown princess was inexplicably funny and adorable? The little stoic glanced at Mu Xingchen again. Big brother, watch. After saying that, her body leapt up with a sound and flipped around in the air. The water spirit energy from all directions instantly surged crazily, as though it could topple the mountains and overturn the seas, rushing towards her side, fighting to be the first to enter her Dantian's godly ruins realm. The little water child cried out joyfully in her conscious. Waha, so pure, wahi, so awesome. Master Silver, do your best. Master Silver, work hard. Keep going, keep going. The little tray ant grumpily patted its head with its paw. Calm down. If you have such a rich wood spirit source, humph, I'll see if you can keep your composure. Yeehaw. Ah. Don't laugh so sinisterly. Chiochio sourly spat out this sentence and didn't say anything else, leaving the little water child to go crazy. The Long siblings stared blankly at the little stoic's actions. They opened their mouths but closed them again. Big brother, Jojo asked you if you could feel the rich water spirit energy here like she did. Mu Xingchen looked speechlessly at Jojo, who was floating in the air, and waved at her. The little girl immediately landed and quickly walked to his side. Big brother? Mu Xingchen looked at her speechlessly. Jojo, Big brother didn't comprehend the water spirit. Big brother comprehended the fire spirit. Everyone was speechless. Lady Qiao Qiao tilted her head and looked at her elder brother blankly. She thought that it was the effect of her bloodline power that allowed her to feel the rich and abundant water spirit energy here. Big brother also has the bloodline of the river of forgetfulness, shouldn't he be able to sense it? Big brother, you don't feel it? As soon as Jojo walked into this world built from ice crystals, she could sense the water spirit energy rushing toward her limbs and bones from all directions. Long Shangyun irritably interrupted her. Only you can feel it. Let's go, let's go. At this time, an old mermaid suddenly swam over. Chapter 4350. The old woman crossed her arms in front of her chest and bowed to Arbor. Following this, more and more mermen swam over. Their faces were filled with reverence as they bowed respectfully to Lady Xiqiao. Arbor was confused. Long Shangyun saw her expression and could not help but snort, reprimanding, "Who asked you to show off? What did I show off about?" Arbor turned back and glared at Long Shangyun, retorting, "Speak human language." Long Shangyun was simply angry and amused, speechlessly looking at her. "Just now you were like this and that, huh? What do you think? Where is this place? This is River of Forgetfulness, the bottom of the sea. Flying is prohibited." You. Arbor then realized she seemed to have flown up just now? There should be a large-scale space restriction at the bottom of the River of Forgetfulness, but it seemed that to her, this restriction did not have any meaning. Now, these ordinary residents of River of Forgetfulness all revered her as a deity. All of them swam over, bowing to her, their faces full of admiration. Misunderstanding, misunderstanding, misunderstanding. Arbor expressionlessly returned the greetings to everyone, using her eyes to glare at Long Shangyun, who was standing beside her. Why didn't you ask them to disperse? What was there to watch? She just had a whim just now, wanting to let Big Brother feel the water spirit energy that she felt. But Big Brother did not feel anything at all. It was really comical. Long Shangyun sneered and shrugged. You started it, settle it yourself. Long Yun hurriedly swam forward to smooth things over, smiling at the crowd of mermen. All right, everyone disperse, there's nothing to see. These are our guests who came from afar. Everyone please disperse. Young master. Before Long Yun could disperse everyone, one of the two mermen who were originally guarding the city gate quickly swam over. What happened? A large group of people came to the city gate. The one leading them claims to be Her Majesty the Queen of City Toppling Women Kingdom. What? Long Yun and Long Shangyun were stunned. Qing Shueshue walked forward with a face full of excitement. Really? The Queen of City Toppling Women Kingdom is here? Are you sure? Yes. How many people are there? Long Xia asked in shock. About 3,000 people. Now they were all crowded around the city gate. The city guard merman felt very helpless. Long Huan pondered for less than a second before he said, "Invite the queen and the others in first. Don't let them enter the River of Forgetfulness." An old voice interrupted Long Huan. Long Huan and Long Shangyun's expressions changed slightly at the same time. They turned around and bowed to an old woman who was walking over. Lord Prophet. Prophet Tuesday, the merfolk commoners, who were still making a ruckus, quickly turned solemn when they saw this old woman swimming over. They also bowed and saluted. Tu Xianshi held a fox head scepter in one hand and looked at Long Yun with a serious expression. Young master, the River of Forgetfulness does not take in outsiders. Arbor glanced at Long Huan coldly. She turned around and held her husband's hand. Let's go. Long Huan's heart skipped a beat. He quickly moved forward to block their path. Cousin, what is the meaning of this? The River of Forgetfulness does not take in outsiders. What are we waiting for? I think you don't have the sincerity to form the Killing Heaven's Fate battle team. Arbor pointed out with a cold expression. Chapter 4351. You even said you wanted to form a heavenly fate battle team. Arbor said with displeasure. Do you want the warriors of the 3 continents to form a battle team while eating seawater and seaweed? Cousin, don't be angry. Long Shi hurriedly took a few steps forward and gave his sister, Long Shangyun, a look for her to go forward and block the little girl's path. This matter can be discussed. Prophet 2 didn't mean it that way, Long Shi hurriedly said. That senile prophet narrowed his eyes at Xiao Mu before unhurriedly shaking his head back. You are? Chu Yun's daughter? Mu Xingqian hurriedly took a step forward and stood in front of his sister. He looked at this senile prophet warily. Chu Yun's son and daughter are already so old. Prophet 2 glanced at them and nodded. Come with me. Arbor didn't react, so Mu Xingqian naturally wouldn't move either. Prophet 2 took 2 steps forward and saw the 2 standing there expressionlessly. They had no intention of following him at all. He couldn't help but frown and turn to the siblings. What's wrong? Mu Xingqian silently glanced at his sister. He was amused by the old man's attitude. What do you mean what's wrong? The beautiful queen's group was still standing at the city gate. Why did this strange old woman suddenly want the siblings to leave with her? If this matter wasn't resolved, how could the siblings leave with her? Long Shi hurriedly took a step forward and said, Cousin, please don't take offense. This is our tribe's great prophet, Prophet Tuesday. The prophet doesn't mean any harm. It's just that the beautiful queen brought 3,000 disciples. I'm afraid our river of forgetfulness can't accommodate so many people at once. Moreover, most of them are ordinary commoners with no cultivation. Although I don't know how they got here, Aunt, you should have brought them here through the transportation formation. Arbor walked to Qing Shueshue and said, Let's go take a look. Qing Shueshue's eyes lit up and she nodded repeatedly. She couldn't wait any longer. Ever since devastating island sank and no trace of it could be found, she could see the sinking island day and night when she closed her eyes and heard the miserable cries of thousands of people. It was as if she could see the scene of her mother fearlessly fighting for her life. It was as if he could see countless broken limbs dancing in the bloody light. That kind of scene was too tragic and painful. Now that she suddenly knew that her mother was safe and sound, the anticipation in her heart was naturally strong and passionate. There was nothing in the world that could stop her from wanting to see her mother. The teleportation rune array was probably left behind by my mother. At a critical moment, it can save Aunt Ye's life. Arbor thought to himself, but he didn't say anything to Qing Shui. As the eldest young miss of Wang Chuan, Long Chu Yun naturally knew some of the clan's secrets. For example, a fixed-point teleportation glyph could directly teleport people to a certain place in the River of Forgetfulness. It was just difficult for ordinary people to pass through the deep-sea passage. After reaching the underwater city, it was not much different from the land route outside. Perhaps the biggest difference was that the space here was different. There was no sun, moon, or stars, but there was space to simulate the scene of day and night. Another thing was the ban on flying. But for ordinary people, whether or not they were allowed to fly was none of their business. The 2 of them walked towards the city gate by themselves. Tu Xinshur's gaze darkened slightly. Chu Yun's children should be surnamed Mu, right? Prophet 2 said coldly. What's your name? Chapter 43-52. Long Huan cursed inwardly and was about to fly forward to stop Tu Xinji's reckless actions. Unexpectedly, a young merman in his 20s flew out from Tu Xinji's side and threw a ball of water at Arbor and Qing Shueshue without a second word. Qing Shueshue turned around and summoned the sword in her conscious, slashing apart that ball of water. The water mist assaulted the 2 of them, and Sir Jojo's expression instantly froze. She gently raised her hand and grabbed, and the countless droplets of water slowly calmed down in midair as if they were intelligent fairies. Strand by strand, drop by drop, the water droplets slowly contracted as if they were dancing on her fingertips, once again condensing into a palm-sized ball of water. Everyone? In the blink of an eye, they saw the little crown princess easily condense that ball of water mist into ice, shattering it into ice powder with a spread of her fingers, and then she raised her slender hand. Get out of the way! Long Huan shouted angrily, his forehead drenched in sweat. Long Shangyun was even more agile and she kicked that young merman's buttocks, directly sending him flying and rolling twice on the ground. Whoosh, 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 ding, 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 ding. The sandy ground was riddled with holes and was a complete mess. The last bit of ice sand landed beside the other young merman's tail with a whooshing sound, startling the latter into repeatedly retreating with a ghastly pale face. Long Huan and his sister looked at the little stoic with an ashen face. At this moment, over 100 young men from the Phoenix tribe had simultaneously pulled out their swords, looking like they were about to rush up and fight to the death with them. Fuck. Can you guys stop for a moment? Long Huan hated that he couldn't forcefully tear at his own hair to express his agony. He had finally established a tiny bit of friendliness with his little cousin along the way, but after they messed with him like this, it was all gone. The young merman who originally attacked only regained his wits at this moment. He screamed in shock and repeatedly retreated while swaying his fishtail. You actually have the cheek to scream. Long Huan glared at that young man. If looks could kill, he would have long killed this brainless fool with 1,000 cuts. Arbor raised his hand, and the strands of water spirits floating around began to condense again. Long Shangyun's heart sank and she hurriedly tugged at her brother's sleeve. Not good, the little stoic was about to flare up. How could the Long siblings, who had interacted with the little stoic multiple times, not understand the little stoic's personality? Damned Sundara, extremely protective. She couldn't bear to see other people hurt her own people in front of her. She had such a bad temper, and she was willing to suffer because of her pride. However, her control over the water spirit was too strong, so strong that it was almost impossible to look at her directly. Long Yun took a deep breath and rushed to Arbor as if he was trying to put out a fire. He opened his arms and shouted, "Cousin, please stop. This is second grandpa's grandson Long Ji. His grandfather was his grandmother's clan elder brother. Let's see, he should be your cousin, Long Ji?" Arbor glanced coldly at Long Huan, and his gaze was so cold that it made people involuntarily shudder. What the hell? Why was it that this stoic face's cold and silent words were enough to frighten people? "Sis cousin," Long Huan hastily explained, "it's a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. Everyone don't attack first." "Cousin, why speak so much with her?" Long Ji had already calmed down by now. Chapter 43-53. When she recalled her cowardly appearance just now, she couldn't help but feel angry. These two are the son and daughter of the traitor Long Chuyun? Mu Xingqian shouted with a sullen face. "Who are you calling a traitor? You better make yourself clear." Long Ji was intimidated by Mu Xingqian's shout and stammered, You dare to do it but don't dare to admit it?" Back then, Long Chuyun teamed up with outsiders to stir up trouble in our river of forgetfulness. It caused our river of forgetfulness to suffer such great losses and was practically unable to recover for many years. If she's not a traitor, then what is she? Jojo. Mu Xingqian hastily lowered his head to look at his younger sister. Sure enough, he saw the little stoic's frosty face. Although her expression didn't change in the slightest, it was very obvious that she was so angry that her body was trembling slightly, and she actually didn't speak for a moment. Prince Imo hastily walked to her side and pulled her small hand, calling out, "Jojo." A pair of cold phoenix eyes shot straight at the person who spoke conceited nonsense. The icy murderous aura in his eyes surged, making it impossible for people to ignore. A towering aura pressed down on that youth named Long Ji. Tu Xianji's expression changed, and he hastily stretched out his hands to create a water barrier to help Long Ji out of this predicament. However, how could the crown prince's aura be easily dispelled by her? As soon as the two came into contact, she felt a terrifying mountain-like pressure crushing down on her, as if it could crush her old bones into nothingness in an instant. "Your Highness." Long Huan cried out in alarm and hastily went up to stop him. "Let's talk things out, Your Highness the Crown Prince." "Your Highness the Crown Prince." Long Shangyun also cried out. "Get down." Emo Lien shouted angrily and a crisp bang was heard. That youth named Long Ji suddenly bent over, and his entire body collapsed with a heavy thump. He involuntarily kowtowed with a bang just like that. The surroundings were dead silent. The merfolk commoners all felt the heavy pressure at this time, so how would they dare to gather? They only dared to stealthily distance themselves from this place and steal glances at each other. Tu Xinji first felt the pressure on his body lighten. He turned around and saw his junior Long Ji in an arched position. She bent down and lowered her head. She knocked her head heavily on the ground and could not even lift it up. Looking at his fishtail rubbing against the ground, it was obvious that he was under a lot of pressure, but he was desperately trying to raise his head. However, the other party's strength suppression was quite terrifying. Not to mention raising his head, even breathing was difficult for him. Long Ji struggled with all her might and felt a sense of helplessness. He had never seen anyone with such tyrannical strength. Even when he was facing his cheap paternal grandmother, He had never felt such a terrifying suppression. At this moment, it was as if a giant mountain was pressing down on him. He felt extremely uncomfortable. His breathing was irregular, and he could feel his neck bones creaking, as if they could shatter at any moment. Longji. Tu Shinji was anxious. He suddenly looked up in Emolien's direction. Stop. If I don't stop, what will you do? Emolien stared coldly at Tu Shinji. Long Huan understood that gaze very well. Although he did not have much contact with this person, he had heard of this crown prince of the divine land. She was not a soft-hearted person. When she revealed such a gaze, it was killing intent. Long Huan's heart sank again. He hurriedly stepped forward to block Tu Shinji. Chapter 43-54. He looked mentally exhausted, but he had no choice but to put on a smile. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please don't take offense. It was this one's cousin who was rude first. Please forgive, please forgive. Emolien glanced at Long Ji coldly as if she was looking at a corpse. He actually dared to anger his wife to the point of speechlessness upon meeting her, and he still wanted to ask for his forgiveness? What forgiveness? This kind of thing should be properly taught a lesson. Things that did not know the immensity of heaven and earth had their eyes on the top of their heads. Speak clearly, Arbor said with a chilly gaze. Long Ji's heart plummeted. He couldn't be more familiar with the little stoic's expression. Back in the imperial capital, when Shangyun angered her, she also had this expression. The little fellow's attitude only gradually eased after she interacted with the siblings for a period of time on the boundless sea. But now Long Ji really wished he could slap this Long Ji youth to death. His efforts were all in vain. Previously, he tried so hard to establish a good relationship with the little stoic. He finally eased after breaking the ice with great difficulty, but with this interference today, everything returned to the starting point. It really wasn't an easy task to pry open this stoic face's heart and get close to her. How did my mother betray the clan? Arbor looked indifferently at Long Ji, who was kneeling on the ground. Speak. Long Ji struggled to crawl on the ground. Suddenly, he felt the pressure on his head lighten, and he abruptly lifted his head up. The youth, Longji, glared at Xiao Mu indignantly as he sneered. What are you still pretending for? Who doesn't know that your mother, Long Chuyun, is a traitor in the river of forgetfulness? Back then, the imperial capital's Long family branch allied with your divine province's Gu family and others to attack our river of forgetfulness and plunder our resources. Although they didn't gain anything in the end, our sea of forgetfulness suffered a great deal of damage. Why do you think we sank to the bottom of the sea? To build a city in the sea here? That's because in that battle more than a decade ago, the river of forgetfulness merfolk suffered countless casualties. In the end, everyone had no choice but to live in seclusion and hide at the bottom of the sea to take refuge. We used to live near the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm on Lisha Island, okay? We can also see the sun, moon, and stars. We can also feel the sea breeze and hear the roar of the sea. It's all your mother's fault, Long Ji said angrily. My father died because of her. In that war, how many people lost their loved ones? How many people were forced to leave their homeland and come to the bottom of the sea? Have you calculated the vastness of the forgotten river? How many islands have suffered? How many people have lost their homes? How can such a traitor return to the river of forgetfulness? Enough! Long Ji shouted angrily and glared at the howling Long Ji with red eyes. There's no need to mention the past. What do you mean by not mentioning it again? Arbor looked coldly at the crowd in front of him. What did Long Chuyun do? Are you trying to frame her with the crime of betrayal? She betrayed the clan? She betrayed the clan? What clan did she betray? You bunch of trash, how can you be considered her clansman? A bunch of cowards. You can't even protect your own sisters, yet you want her to bear the burden of your clan's safety alone? Why? Just because you guys are weaklings? Chapter 43-55. You deserve to lie in an underwater cave without sunlight for the rest of your lives. Because you deserve it. You're a bunch of bedbugs, dog poop, maggots crawling in ditches. The little stoic's pitch-black eyes revealed a trace of icy mockery. She either didn't open her mouth to scold people, or she would absolutely pick the most hurtful words to scold them. Once her venomous tongue opened, it would definitely make people feel extremely ashamed. What did you say? Long Ji was so angry that his entire body trembled. If it weren't for the clansman hugging his waist, he would have immediately pounced forward, wishing for nothing more than to tear apart this spouting nonsense little stoic. The little crown princess scoffed and said in an extremely mocking tone, "Look at your current appearances. Filthy, cowardly, shameless, pretentious. People who are shameless are invincible. What Wangchuan dragon clan? I think you're all the biggest jokes from top to bottom." You. Tu Xinji was also infuriated. When she saw the juniors quarreling earlier, she also wanted to go up and stop them, but she fainted from anger from the crown prince's sudden attack and the little stoic's sudden counterattack. Now that she heard the little crown princess's words again, she only felt that every word was heart-wrenching, and she was endlessly resentful. Long Ji broke free from his clansmen at once and pounced toward Arbor. The little stoic's eyes were bone-chilling as she waved her hand and roared, "No one is to interfere." Mu Xingqian, who originally wanted to block the way and send Long Ji flying with a kick, could only silently retract his foot and continue to rage on the side. He watched as his younger sister charged forward like a cannonball and kicked Long Ji's chest. Boom. Long Ji was kicked to the ground and his fishtail even bounced. He truly looked like a large fish that had been thrown onto a chopping board. Before she could recover her wits, she saw the little stoic pouncing straight at him and punching him in the left eye. Long Ji's eye turned black on the spot, but this was only the beginning. Closely following that, the little stoic threw a torrential left hook, right hook, uppercut and downpercut. Her aura was fully unleashed, and the wind from her fists whistled as the shadows of her fists interweaved like a storm. Everyone saw Long Jijin being pressed to the ground like a fish and being beaten up fiercely. Long Chen was speechless. Long Shangyun, the two siblings looked at each other and cried out in their hearts at the same time, "It's completely over. You can't even beat me. Serves your entire clan right for being cowardly turtles in this underwater cave for 10,000 years. Back then, it was you who sent my mother out for a marriage alliance. Have you asked for her opinion? Don't you think there's something wrong with this marriage? Have you never thought about the consequences of a marriage alliance? You filthy bugs that are rotten to the bone. How dare you speak ill of Long Chuyun with your cowardly looks? When Long Chuyun single-handedly challenged 9,000 people from Shuntian Prefecture in the Lower Star Field, where the fuck were all of you hiding? A bunch of cowards. Pussy. Scum. With your lowly skills, you dare to talk about Long Chuyun in front of me? You're so shameless, huh? For your sake, Long Chuyun left the Mu family and gathered people to come and rescue you. What about you? What did you do in return? Traitor. Ah. Arbor suddenly roared with laughter and kicked Long Ji, who was like a lump of mud, in front of Tu Xinji, whose expression had changed abruptly. Look at how old you are. You are humans. Chapter 4356. Prophet Tuesday. Long Huan quickly stood in front of Prophet Tu to stop her from seeking her own death. In the river of forgetfulness, everyone respected her because of her identity as a prophet. But that didn't mean that the little crown princess would think highly of him. His little cousin had always been a person who did not play by the rules. Who knew what kind of terrifying thing would happen if Tu Xinji went forward? After all, wasn't Long Ji, who was lying on the ground like a pile of mud, the best proof? How dare you? Tu Xinji was stopped by Long Huan and couldn't help but shout angrily. He stared at Arbor in shock. She had watched Long Chuyun grow up since she was a child. He was mature, steady, and determined. No matter what, he wouldn't be so brash and unrestrained. What did her daughter eat growing up? How could she be so domineering? Standing in the territory of the River of Forgetfulness, she dared to beat up the nobles of the River of Forgetfulness. It was obvious that the River of Forgetfulness did not exist in her eyes at all. In the early years, this child, Chuyun, was still considered steady, but she did not expect that after leaving Wangchuan, he would become even more useless. He did not know how to raise his children at all. Look at what he had taught the girl. Has your mother never taught you to be courteous to your elders and humble to your peers? Tu Xianshi sneered. Mu Xingqian was immediately enraged. You have no right to say such nonsense. If it weren't for you ignorant clansmen dragging her down, she wouldn't have been able to escape. How could his mother die so early? Now you actually have the face to talk back to my sister? Tu Xianshi was stunned, and he seemed as if he'd just woken up from a dream. He nodded slightly and said, Right, Chuyun passed away a long time ago. I'm afraid your younger sister has no one to teach her all these years, Prophet. Long Huan hurriedly interrupted her and looked at her speechlessly. Why didn't he feel that the Prophet's words were so unpleasant in the past? Everything he said today seemed to be inappropriate and stinging to the ears. She felt a sense of helplessness from the bottom of his heart. Even though she really wanted to pull back the little stoic's hostile mood, it was to no avail that so many pig teammates around her were useless. Long Shangyun stepped forward and held Prophet Tu's arm. Prophet, if you have anything to say, let's go back to grandmother's place later. Let's not cause a ruckus here for now. Madam is here, madam. Madam is here. Mother. Long Ji and Long Xiangyun turned their heads and saw a dignified and elegant lady in white walking over with a group of people. This Madame Long's hair was tied up and secured with a long jade hairpin. There was a happy smile on her face, and there seemed to be light flowing in her eyes. She was exceptionally beautiful. Since you're back, why aren't you going back to the mansion? What are you all standing here for? Han Suqiong smiled and held her daughter Long Shangyun's hand. She turned to look at Mu Xingqian and the others in Arbor. She carefully sized them up and was slightly startled. These people? He looks a little familiar. Mother, this is Aunt's son and daughter. Long Shangyun tugged at her mother's sleeve and said coquettishly. Han Suqiong was suddenly enlightened. She quickly stepped forward and looked at Mu Xingqian and Arbor. She excitedly said, Chu Yun's son and daughter have already grown up. I am your aunt, Han Suqiong. What's going on? What are you guys doing? Quarreling? Han Suqiong looked at Long Ji, whose face was bruised and swollen, and then turned to look at Mu Xingqian and his sister. Chapter 4357. Long Qian heaved a sigh of relief as if he had seen his savior. He hurriedly walked forward and bowed to his mother. Mother, please help persuade cousin. Just now, cousin Long Ji suddenly barged out. Long Qian's ability to express himself was not bad. He quickly reported what had happened to his mother. Madame Long's face darkened as she turned to look at Long Ji. Long Ji, what are you saying? How much do you know about what happened back then? You're just a junior, how can you talk about your Aunt Chu Yun? How rude. I'll mention this to your mother and let her teach you a lesson about hierarchy. Long Ji had been beaten up by Lord Jojo and was now being reprimanded by Madame Long. He felt that he had lost all his face. His face, which could not be seen, was even more distorted and swollen. Han Suqiong ignored him and walked to Arbor and Mu Xingqian with a smile. She said softly, I received a letter from Long Qian a while ago saying that you guys are arriving soon. I've already prepared the bedding, furniture and furnishings for you guys. I'm just waiting for you guys to come. I've been looking forward to you guys coming 3 days ago. I didn't expect you to be so late. Did something happen on the way? Or did that brat Long Qian cause an accident because he didn't lead the way properly? Madame Long's mouth was very sharp as she spoke rapidly. Even someone like Mu Xingqian, who was good at communicating, could not stand Madame Long's enthusiasm, let alone the usually cold Lord Jojo. Xiao Xiao didn't know how to react when she saw Madame Long's passionate and well-mannered demeanor. As the saying goes, one does not hit a smiling person. No matter how cold Lord Jojo's face was, he could not hold it in front of Madame Long. Emolien took a few steps forward and held his wife's hand. He nodded at Madame Long and said, There's no need to trouble yourself. We're leaving now. Right. Lord Jojo, who was stunned, regained his senses and nodded. Let's go. Madame Long hurriedly reached out to stop the two of them and comforted them with a smile. Don't be anxious. This is husband. Madame Long suddenly understood and looked at Emolien with admiration. My nephew's son-in-law is really talented. Her gaze shifted slightly as she turned to look at Long Huan. Long Huan nodded at Madame Long discreetly. Mrs. Long immediately smiled and said, It was all a misunderstanding. It's good that everyone has talked about it. How could the entire river of forgetfulness blame your mother, right? Your grandmother has been missing her for so many years. The younger generation is insensible and doesn't even know how to speak properly. Auntie will find someone to teach him a lesson later. Don't take it to heart. Mrs. Long smiled and stepped forward to hold Arbor's hand. Tu Xinji frowned slightly, but seeing Madame Long say so, he was too embarrassed to tear down Madame Long's stage. However, in his heart, he still had a lot of opinions about the little girl's ruthless way of doing things. She was so vicious at such a young age. Look at how she had tormented young Master Longji. Auntie is still at the city gate. I already know about this. Get someone to invite them in, Madame Long said with a smile. No matter what, they are people who were persecuted by the heavens. They are guests from afar. How can we not welcome them? If you have any plans in the future, you can discuss it with the clan leader. Xiao Mu creased her brows. Everything had been said by this Madame Long, so she had nothing to say. Chapter 4358. Long Huan inwardly sighed in relief. Fortunately, Lin Mingya's mother, who was adept at dealing with money and power, was here. She finally managed to keep Lin Mingya's group of people, who were difficult to deal with. If he couldn't keep them after entering Wangchuan House, then wouldn't all his hard work these days be a joke? Just thinking about it made him pity himself. Why was he so pitiful? Long Shangyun's expression also eased a bit, and she walked up to speak to the little stoic. She saw the stoic face shoot her an icy, chilly, and emotionless glance. She was so angry that she shut her mouth and didn't want to waste words with this person. "Let's go to the residence first and meet your grandmother, okay?" Madame Long said with a smile. "Don't worry, I'll have someone bring Queen Qingqing and the others over." Madame Long smiled with a warm expression. "Let's go." Xingqian, this child, I remember seeing him once when he was young. He was just born then, but he's already grown so big now. Xingqian's younger sister is called Mu Qiao, right? How about Auntie call you Jojo? The friendly Madame Long chatted with them the entire way. Even a child like the little stoic who caused an awkward silence as soon as she opened her mouth couldn't really cool down the atmosphere. Madame Long's smile was like a spring breeze as she spoke with assurance and assurance. It truly made it hard for people to turn cold. Mu Xingqian cupped his hands at Madame Long and said indifferently, "Madame Long doesn't need to be so courteous." "Silly child, how is this courteous? We're all family, so why are you treating us as outsiders and speaking in a foreign language?" Madame Long turned to smile at him and pointed at the residence's entrance directly in front of them. We're here. This is our home." Wangchuan Dragon Clan's royal bloodline was built in the depths of the sea and surrounded by a water barrier within 5 kilometers in all directions. The mountain gate erected in front of them was the strongest barrier. Naturally, no one could pass through without an entry token. Arbor's group silently looked at each other. As Madame Long passed through the water barrier, the scenery in front of them abruptly changed. It was no longer misty and hazy. The scenery in front of them changed, and the corridors, courtyards, and pavilions were all in sight. The forest was deep, and a fragrant scent assailed their nostrils. When the servants saw Madame Long, they hurriedly bowed and greeted her. Madame Long smiled and nodded, indicating for them to do their own things. "Jojo, are you going back to Yunyuan first, or, Madam?" A middle-aged servant came forward with a smile and bowed to Madame Long. "The patriarch has heard that young Master Mu and young Miss Mu have arrived. Please come with us." Madame Long couldn't help but smile. She turned around and looked at Arbor and the others apologetically. "Jojo Stardust, your grandmother already knows that you're here. Old people are impatient. I think you should go and pay your grandmother a visit first. What do you think?" Mu Xingqian stretched out his hand and bowed. With an indifferent expression he said, "As it should be. Madame Long, please lead the way." Madame Long saw his solemn and indifferent expression, and knew that the previous matter must have made this young master unhappy, and he would not be able to resolve the knot in his heart in a short time. "Where is Cloud Court?" Arbor suddenly asked. Long Huan sighed in relief and said with a smile, "Younger cousin, you don't know, but Cloud Court is the court where Aunt used to live." He wasn't afraid that the little stoic would speak, but he was afraid that she would ignore him and not speak no matter what. "When Mother found out that you were coming, she ordered people to tidy up inside and out a long time ago." Chapter 4359. Cloud Court is your mother's residence. Madame Long pulled on the young crown princess's hand and whispered softly, "You? Do you want to go over and take a look now?" Arbor glanced at her and shook his head apathetically. "No need. So many years have passed. What's the rush?" The little stoic turned around and walked away without looking back. Prince Mo knitted his brows, feeling faint regret in his heart. If he had known that Jojo would be so unhappy after coming to Forget River, he wouldn't have agreed to bring Jojo to such a sad place back then. This was only the first day they entered Forget River, but how many times had Jojo been sad already? Emolian was in a bad mood, so she naturally didn't find anyone pleasing to the eye. When she saw Madame Long and her family standing there in a daze, she couldn't help but ask coldly, "Aren't we going to see Forget River Dragon Clan's clan leader?" "Ah." Madame Long snapped out of her trance and nodded with a smile. "Everyone please come this way." The group of people walked past a vibrant and colorful garden, and walked along a small path to the pavilion in front of them. The pond pavilion was reflected in a circular lake, giving off a somewhat hazy and misty feeling. Mu Xingqian and the others were surprised. They didn't expect there to be such a bizarre scenery at the bottom of the deep sea. What was the difference between this and being on land? Qing Hongsa couldn't resist touching the dewy grass. "This is real. Of course it's real. A youth from the Phoenix tribe looked at her strangely. This is a spiritual realm that's a world of its own. It looks like it's merged with the sea outside, but it's actually not in the same world. Qing Shueshue nodded and said, the mist barrier we passed through earlier is probably a natural barrier that separates this place from the outside world. Arbor, Mu Xingqian, and the others stopped in front of the pavilion. They saw an elderly woman in embroidered robes with a dignified figure walking out of the pavilion. Although this old madam's hair was white and her face was wrinkled, her back was ramrod straight. In her hand was a scepter made of green wood. It was propped on the ground with a fist-sized black pearl embedded at the top. Behind the old madam was a scholarly man in a green robe. He was around the middle of his life and had a sickly look on his face. At first glance, one could tell that his body was weak and that he needed to be bedridden all year round. The two of them met Arbor's group, and the old woman's gaze instantly stopped on Arbor's face. It was as if she was looking at something far away through that frosty little face of hers. The old madam didn't say anything. Instead, it was the sickly green-robed man behind her who took a few steps forward with an excited expression. He looked at Mu Xingqian and Arbor standing at the front and asked in a trembling voice, "Is it Xingqian and Jojo?" "I'm your uncle Long Chuyu." Arbor was not as excited as Long Chuyu, and neither was Mu Xingqian. The two siblings only quietly watched this cheap uncle who had suddenly appeared in front of them, their expressions extremely indifferent. When the old madam heard Long Chuyu's voice, she recovered her senses. Only then did she withdraw her distant gaze from Arbor and say indifferently, "Come in with me. Let's sit down and talk." Arbor looked coldly at the old madam. "You looked at me just now. Did you see something? Did you see your pitiful daughter, your lowly daughter? Do you know how and where she died?" Long Chuyu's face paled slightly. Chapter 4360. What identity are you using to speak to us? Maternal grandmother? Dragon Clan's clan head? Or your daughter who died outside, Long Chuyu's mother? Impudent. A beautiful middle-aged woman beside the old madam couldn't help but shout angrily. Long Qian raised her hand and stopped that beautiful woman from continuing to hoot. She took a deep breath and looked at Arbor. "I know you siblings have a grudge against me." Grudge? Arbor couldn't help but snicker. He tilted his head and looked at everyone in disdain. How can someone without feelings have a grudge? Everyone looked over in a daze. They saw the little stoic whose white robes were not tainted by a speck of dust. Her expression was indifferent as she stood there with her hands behind her back. She was like the vast sky, aloof and lonely. "Us siblings didn't come here to acknowledge you as our family, nor do we have any intention of seeking connections. We just want you to hand over all of Mother's belongings. Also, please hand over her remaining life lantern's broken shadow. Because you don't deserve it." The beautiful middle-aged woman glared and couldn't help but turn to look at the Dragon Clan's clan head, Long Qian. "And are you going to allow her to be so impudent? Are you going to allow her to trample on our Dragon Clan's face? And you heard about what happened just now as well. This woman who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth dared to severely injure my son. And he's your grandson too. Are you going to allow her to shut up?" Long Qian looked sternly at that beautiful woman. Bai Ning Shuang stomped her feet in anger. She had already heard about her son Long Ji's incident, but she hadn't rushed over to see how badly he was injured. However, she felt like her heart was about to shatter when she heard the vivid description of the incident from the messenger. "Must you speak like this?" Old Madame Long Qian took a deep breath and leaned on the cane in her hand. "Just now how can you not know what I did just now? That bastard called Long Ji insulted my mother at the city gates. This isn't something that happened overnight, right? Traitor? Is this the crime that you Dragon Clan scum are trying to frame her with? She is such a proud and aloof person. Why should she accept your accusations? When she single-handedly fought with the Shantian Manor, what were you cowardly clansmen who only knew how to hide at the bottom of the sea doing? Moaning about nothing, living like a drunken stupor? I only asked today how much is Xiao Xiao Feng you. Look at her with a smile. She's such a foolish woman. She sacrificed her entire life for your despicable race. In the end she even lost her life. It's funny, isn't it? I think it's funny too. Ah, what a sad life. Stop talking. Long Qian shouted angrily. She is destined to be alone for the rest of her life. Arbor suddenly raised his voice and his cold voice covered Long Qian's shout. Do you know what it means to be alone? Family, parents, brother, husband, son, daughter, everything is gone. In the end he died miserably in that secret realm. Don't you have a heart? Don't you feel pain? She didn't know why her eyes were brimming with tears at the end. Long Qian gripped the cane and stood there with a stern expression. Yet Long Chuyu wailed bitterly and dashed forward to hug the little stoic. Suddenly he was pushed away forcefully and met with a pair of bone-chilling phoenix eyes. Emolian reached out to pull the little girl into his arms. He suppressed his emotions and his voice was low and trembling. Let's go back. Chapter 4361. It had only been a short while, but she had angered Jojo to this extent multiple times in a row. Go away. You don't have the right to touch her. Emolian looked disgusted and pushed Long Chuyu to the ground. He grabbed her waist and looked down at her with wavering eyes. I'll take you back. We won't care about what happens here anymore. I only want you to be happy. What merfolk tribe? What killing Tianyun? These people and matters had nothing to do with his Jojo. Emolian caressed her head and looked down at her reddened eyes, unable to hide the heartache in his eyes. Jojo, don't cry. My heart is in unbearable pain when you cry. I don't know where to go. Although he didn't say anything, the warmth from his palms calmed Arbor down a little. Long Chuyu collapsed on the ground and started bawling. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's Uncle's fault. It's me. I've let your mother down. It's all because I'm useless. Madame Long rushed forward to support Long Chuyu, who was on the verge of a breakdown. She turned around and looked at Arbor with a complicated expression. Long Qian gripped the staff in his hand tightly and said indifferently, Don't cry. I've taught you for so many years. Why do you still only know how to cry when something happens? Long Chuyu felt terrible. He supported his wife's hand and staggered to steady himself. Mother, what happened back then? You can't blame anyone for what happened back then. Long Qian turned to look at Arbor, a cold glint shooting out of his eyes. You're young and don't know the whole story. It's pardonable. But things aren't what you think. Send Mother's life lantern's broken shadow and all of her belongings to Cloud Court within 2 hours. Emolian coldly interrupted Long Qian's words and directly picked up the little stoic before turning to leave. Clan Head Long, you can try the consequences of disobeying this monarch. I'm afraid you can't afford to gamble. After throwing down these icy words, Emolian was disinclined to continue conversing with other people, so he left with Xiao Mu in his arms without looking back. Mu Xingqian only felt his heart clench uncomfortably. He glanced at his indifferent grandmother, then mechanically turned his head and strode after her. Although the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was smiling, his eyes were cold. Leisurely putting down his arms, he glanced at the silent Dragon Clan leader and chuckled. Hurry up, our patience is very limited. When the rest of the people saw this, they hurriedly followed and left in a group. Shua, look. Is that Mother? Qing Hongsa suddenly cried out in surprise. She raised her hand and tugged at Qing Shueshue's sleeve. Qing Shueshue naturally saw the queen and her entourage. She hurriedly went up to greet them, unable to hide her excitement. Mother. Qing Hongsa stood behind Qing Shueshue and did not step forward. She only looked at the queen with a complicated expression. He Luan stepped forward and bowed in greeting. Greetings to Her Majesty. This subject is very happy that Her Majesty is safe and sound. Beautiful queen looked travel-worn, but her eyes were exceptionally black and bright. Qing Shueshue looked at her mother with tears in her eyes. She curled her fingers and restrained herself. Only then did she not impulsively jump into her mother's arms. Qing Yi also looked at Qing Shueshue with a gratified expression. Shueshue, Mother is proud of you. Qing Yi reached out with a smile and hugged her daughter who flew into her arms. She stroked her hair with a gentle gaze. Chapter 4362. When I came in just now, I heard that Jojo had some conflict with the mermen. Where are they now? Mother, it's a long story. Let's talk as we walk. Qing Hongsa stood outside the crowd. She opened her mouth slightly and watched Qing Shueshue and her mother leave together. She froze on the spot. He Luan and the others followed the queen, leaving her standing there in a daze for a long time. Then she slowly followed them, dejected. So her mother really didn't like her. Didn't she already know this? Why did she still feel sad? Mother, are we really going to stay in Wangchuan? Qing Shueshue held the queen's left hand and tilted her head to look at her. If she lived under someone else's roof for a long time, it wouldn't feel good. Qing Yi looked at her with a smile. Aren't we going to set up the Tianyun battle group? Mother, you want to join? Lisha Island should be a good choice. Qing Yi patted the back of her daughter's hand. We'll take it one step at a time. Let's see first. Arbor pushed open a long window and looked up at the silver moonlight pouring down from the sky. Faint silver frost covered the window. The faint moonlight illuminated the courtyard. A gust of hot wind blew over, ruffling a strand of hair by her temples. Emolien walked slowly to her side and looked down at a small mahogany box on the table. Not long ago, the merman had sent her mother's belongings. There weren't many of them. After all these years, her mother only had this small box with her. A few pieces of jewelry and a few personal items. There was also a short knife inlaid with a row of blue gems. It looked very earthy. It was very ugly and the handle of the scabbard had been worn out. It was clear that the owner liked this knife very much. Arbor took it out. The blade hadn't been used for so many years and was no longer shiny. There was even a small cut on the blunt edge of the knife. So ugly, Arbor muttered to herself. Her small hand touched the blade inch by inch and stopped for a moment. Fu Sheng. What? Emolien paused and looked down at his wife's hand. Fu Sheng. Arbor touched the blurry handwriting on the blade. Fu Sheng. Fu Sheng? Emolien murmured. Life is like a dream, but when you wake up from the dream, it's all in vain. Arbor put the blunt knife back into its sheath and held it tightly in his hand. My Jojo. Emolien reached out and hugged her slender waist. She sighed softly and said, tomorrow we will go back. Don't meddle in these matters anymore. Arbor lifted his head and looked at him seriously. After a long time he shook his head. Emolien raised his eyebrows slightly. Not for anything else. Arbor put his hand over his heart and murmured softly, for you, for our parents and siblings, for our friends. I hope that the 3 prefectures will be stable, that the country will continue to exist, and that the world will be peaceful and prosperous. I don't want to see this world become hell on earth, just like the previous world. Who would be willing to experience the world of desolation and ruins after having seen the beautiful flowers in full bloom? We don't fight for others. We only fight for the well-being of our future generations. Emolien's eyes flickered. He reached out and cupped her small face. He nodded with a smile. Good, my Jojo is so good. Everything will be as you wish. What do you think Fu Sheng means? Arbor leaned against his chest and asked softly. How could the broken knife that her mother treasured so much be meaningless? Fu Sheng, what was Fu Sheng? Chapter 4363. The next day the main hall of the Dragon Clan was filled with many people. Queen Qing sat on the left side and chatted with the clan leader, Long Qian, for less than 3 sentences when a servant announced their arrival. Long Qian looked up and saw the cold-faced little stoic entering hand in hand with a tall and slender black-clothed youth. They stood in the center of the hall. Jojo. Queen Qing stood up happily and hurried over to greet him. Xiaomu looked over. When she met her smiling gaze, her expression relaxed, and her lips involuntarily curled into a faint smile. Long Xiangyun saw this and hastily tugged on her brother's sleeve. Long Xiang felt a bit bitter inside. This little stoic was too hard to get along with. The siblings had interacted with this stoic face for so many days, but they had never seen her show such a sincere smile to them. Aunt Yi. Queen Qingyi walked over and hugged her. She patted her shoulder. It's great that you're all okay. Aunt Yi, is there a transportation formation at the bottom of the sea that will send you away? Mu Xingchen couldn't help but ask. Qingyi didn't hide it and nodded. This transportation formation was set up by your mother. It's been so many years. I didn't expect that it would come in handy one day. That time we were still young. We often met up and went to the Sea Valley to train together. Your mother found it troublesome, so she asked someone to set up a transportation formation so she could find me anytime. Qingyi couldn't help but yearn for it when she talked about her childhood. In the blink of an eye you're all grown up. That's all in the past. Jojo Xingchen. Yesterday? Yesterday was just a misunderstanding. Long Qian interrupted Queen Qingye's words. Arbor glanced at her coldly. Our mission this time is to set up and kill the Heavenly Fate battle group. Let's cut the crap. Previously when Long Xiang discussed with us, what island did he say we would do it on? When Long Xiang heard the little crown princess calling his name, he hastily came out from the Long clan and nodded. Yes. The Dragon Clan is going to set up the base of the Celestial Fate Legion on Lisha Island. When everyone is gathered, we will begin the secret training. With half a year as the deadline, we, the Forgotten River Dragon Clan, will cooperate with the training of the 3 continents. Since that's the case, let's go together. Arbor turned to the Queen and nodded. All right. Long Qian's face was cold the entire time. When she heard this, she couldn't help but say, "Is this the only thing we can talk about? What else do you want to talk about?" Arbor looked coldly at the dignified old lady. "I want to talk to you in private," Long Qian said. "That won't be necessary." Emolian directly refused and said with a cold expression, "You just need to do as you said and provide that island. 10,000 elites from the Divine Prefecture should be able to reach the River of Forgetfulness in the next 2 days. There are 10,000 elites from the Tsang and Ming continent. They will probably arrive in 2 days." Emolian looked up at Long Qian and said, "So, you just have to prepare yourself." After Long Qian was reprimanded by Prince Emo, she didn't get angry. Of course she knew who these two people were. However, she had to talk to the little stoic face to face. No one could stop her. "I know that you have opinions about me and the entire Long clan," Long Qian said coldly. Chapter 4364. But there are many things that are not as simple as you children think. Back then, the Wangchuan region was attacked by you humans. How many people died and how many resources were lost? Don't you know? Tu Xianzi walked out of the crowd with his cane and snorted. "That's all in the past. We won't pursue the matter and we won't seek any justice. Instead, we want to form an alliance with you. Shouldn't you show some sincerity? Dear Tu Xianzi, is our sincerity not enough?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal waved the fan in his hand and looked at Tu Xianzi with a smile. "We came all the way here from the land of the gods and accepted the alliance. What else do you want?" Long Qian looked at Arbor seriously and said, "I want to talk to you face to face." "We have nothing to talk about." Arbor turned around and pulled Emolian out. Long Qian ordered coldly, "Stop them." Immediately, countless merman guards swarmed in from outside and surrounded the two of them. Emolian turned around with a spurious smile to look at the frosty Long Qian. "Clan Headlong, we advise you to be prudent and think thrice." Long Qian looked at Emolian coldly and turned to look at Arbor. However, he saw that the little girl's naturally cold face did not show any emotion. Only her dark eyes were staring at him coldly and silently. He felt a little scared. Long Qian took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He raised his hand slightly and said, "I only need 15 minutes. You can leave once you're done." "There's nothing that can't be said." Arbor's eyes were cold. "If you have something to say, you can say it here." "Are you sure?" Long Qian couldn't help but be angry at the little girl's stubborn attitude. He raised his voice and shouted. Arbor nodded. "Speak. If that's the case, then please, Aunt Bai. Aunt Bai." Long Qian and Long Shangyun couldn't help but interrupt by Ning Shuang. They looked at Long Qian anxiously with a serious expression. "Grandmother, please calm down." "Grandmother, why are you getting angry at the stoic face? She was born like that, expressionless to everyone. Didn't you see that she was also expressionless when facing her husband?" "It's not targeted at you," Long Shangyun said anxiously. Long Qian's furious gaze slowly calmed down. She stared at Arbor and said, "This is a serious matter. I can only talk to you in private. A quarter of an hour should be enough." Arbor stared at her coldly for a moment, then took her husband's hand and walked out. "Long Huan, how do I get to Lisha Island?" Long Huan could not help but smile bitterly. At this time, she really did not want to be called by the little crown princess. Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. Bai Ning Shuang's face was filled with anger, but she had nowhere to vent it. Thinking of her poor son Long Ji's miserable state, she wished she could cut the woman in front of her into 1,000 pieces and pull out her tendons and bones. Her precious son was actually beaten up by a little bastard to the point that half of his body was paralyzed. How could she let such a vicious woman go today? "Oh, it's so lively here." A light chuckle came from the door. The person was dressed in white. He was tall and slender, and his long hair hung loosely by his waist. As he walked over with a smile, it was as if there was a faint layer of light surrounding him. "State Preceptor?" Emolian and Arbor both murmured. Chapter 4365. Didn't the State Preceptor say he was imprisoned? Wasn't the State Preceptor forcefully detained by the Mare people? Looking at this guy's unscathed appearance, could it be in order to survive, the State Preceptor shamelessly sought refuge with the Wangchuan Dragon clan? Your Highness Crown Princess, why are you two looking at me like that?" The State Preceptor pretended his heart was thumping rapidly and raised his hand to calm his heart. Arbor's eyes were cold, like knives stabbing at the person in front of him, sizing him up. From the first time she met the state preceptor, she felt that he was very strange, but there was also a sense of familiarity amidst the strangeness. They met several times at the palace banquets. He seemed to speak on her and the crown prince's behalf, but in fact he was dragging them down time and time again. For example, at the beginning when the elders of the divine continent rejected her marriage with Emolien, the state preceptor suggested that the wandering great elder make this decision. However, at that time, everyone thought that the unreliable great elder Kong-in would not return so quickly. In the end, the old monk returned and gave everyone a huge surprise. Another example was suggesting to postpone the wedding date. Another example was requesting to see the crown prince and suggesting to bring the little crown princess along to the Wangchuan for a discussion. Each of these things were strange, seemingly unrelated, but in fact they were all directed at her. You are not the state preceptor. You are the snake beauty. You are Ding Ting Ding Ding Yun. Sir Jojo suddenly realized. Once he said this, Emolien jumped in fright and subconsciously pulled his wife into his arms. The black moon sword suddenly flew out of his conscious and cautiously blocked in front of the two. Tisk. The state preceptor on the opposite side lightly sked and shook his head, saying, Xiao Qiao, why do you look like you have seen a ghost? Aren't you a ghost? A ghost haunting you. Alright everyone, harmony breeds wealth, don't draw your swords. The state preceptor walked over with a smile. He used two slender fingers to press down the sword of the mere people guard beside him and walked to Arbor, staring deeply at the black moon in front of him. I miss you, Xiao Qiao. Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. Why are you pretending to be the state preceptor? Because I want to see you. What else can it be for? Can't I see you whenever I want by pretending to be the state preceptor? The state preceptor blinked. Under everyone's gaze, that faces had a series of bone and muscle transformations. Soon, a face that was as beautiful as a flower appeared. She blinked her charming eyes and smiled at the two of them. Where's the state preceptor? State preceptor? What state preceptor? The original state preceptor. Xiao Mu practically didn't want to talk to him. Young Master Ding glanced at her with a smile and casually fiddled with his slender fingers. What an annoying person. He's not even willing to cooperate with me. I have no other choice but to let him die. You even searched his soul? Histites, Master, Tis? S. How did you do it? Emolien's eyes were filled with shock. The state preceptor Ding Yun killed was a true expert, and he was about 200 years old. His cultivation was naturally deep. Ding Yun, this person usually acted too well. Even his father did not discover the slightest clue. If Ding Yun conspired against the great emperor, Emolien was terrified as she thought about it, and felt a chill in her heart. Why are you wasting words with them? Bai Ning Shuang said angrily, take him down. I've been very busy these few days. I'll probably be back to normal by Saturday. Chapter 4366. Ding Yun glanced at Bai Ning Shuang indifferently. Oh, who are you to yell at me? Bai Ning Shuang choked at his words. Indeed, this punk had yet to be acknowledged by the Long clan. She was in no position to yell at him for help. But Bai Ning Shuang felt extremely indignant at being choked right in front of her face. A cold glint flashed in her eyes. What an audacious brat. Recently, anyone in this family could really insult her to her face. She let this punk do it, but he was still spouting nonsense. He really didn't know what he was doing. Long Shangyun frowned. Why did you come out? Ding Yun ignored her. His beautiful eyes were smiling as he looked at Arbor. Little Qiao, why don't we find a place to talk? Sir Jojo glared at him coldly, then turned to look at Long Huan. His gaze was sharp and merciless. You've been hooking up with him for a long time? What did he mean by hooking up? Long Huan and young Master Ding wanted to roll their eyes at the same time. Why did these words sound so awkward? Cousin, you're thinking too much. Ding Yun took a step forward and said with a smile, of course not. I'm not with them. We're the ones who are together. Arbor looked at him coldly. I met Sikong Fuling. I promised her to meet you. Cult Master Ding immediately beamed and nodded. That's great. Long Huan couldn't help but roll his eyes at young Master Ding. He dared to bet with his 20 years of intelligence that Sir Jojo's next words would definitely not satisfy young Master Ding. As expected, Arbor said coldly, now that we've met, I've fulfilled my promise. Stay away from me in the future. Cult Master Ding was instantly flabbergasted. He stared at her for a long time. That means we've met? Are you blind? If this was a meeting, then what was? Xiao Mu grumpily rebuked him before turning to look at her husband. Mo Lien nodded knowingly, took her hand and walked out. Young Master Ding was not angry. He waved his hand with a smile and ran out. Jojo, wait. I have something to tell you. Long Qian's face darkened as she watched them leave without looking back. Her face was extremely ugly. Bai Ning Shuang was flustered and exasperated. And are you going to let them leave just like that? Shut up. Long Qian had lived for so long, so she was naturally knowledgeable. With Bai Ning Shuang's current state, how could she not know? Wasn't it because of Longji's incident that he harbored a grudge against Qiao Mu and her husband? But with just her, Bai Ning Shuang? He really wasn't a match for that ferocious couple. You don't have to meddle in the affairs of the clan. Long Qian coldly looked up and glanced at Bai Ning Shuang. It's time for your son Long Ji to be educated. He's always talking about Chu Yun's past. Who gave him the guts to do that? Long Qian sneered. He doesn't act like one at all. As his mother, you don't even know how to correct his nonsense. Now that he's being beaten up, he deserves it. You don't have to blame others. Bai Ning Shuang couldn't help but feel resentful. Who in the entire Forget Creek doesn't know about Sister Chu Yun? And why are you saying this now? This was too unkind. This wasn't the first time she had said this. For so many years, the entire Forget Creek had been filled with stories about Long Chu Yun betraying the clan. Chapter 4367. They said that she watched helplessly as the Long family's cadet branch brought a large group of people to attack Wangshuan. They said that she stood by and did not care about the lives of her family members at all. In the end, didn't they say that she was cold, selfish, and had no concept of bloodline? What? Now that her daughter had returned, the old lady wanted to push all the blame onto her son? Her son, Longji, was not the only one spreading this rumor. If the old lady really cared, why didn't she stop others from spreading it before? Why did she have to say this when her daughter returned? Bai Ning Shuang's lungs were about to explode from anger. Although she was full of complaints and wanted to explode, she had no choice but to swallow all her words when she saw Long Qian's solemn and cold face. Bai Ning Shuang bowed. Aunt, Longji may be reckless, but your granddaughter didn't go easy either. Longji is still lying on the bed and can't get up. Long Qian was already vexed about how to communicate with the little stoic face to face. Now that Bai Ning Shuang reprimanded her, she became even more indignant. It's not like you don't know what's the most important thing right now. Of course I know. Shui Yuan is so seriously ill. As her aunt, how can I not feel heartache? Bai Ning Shuang pretended to use a handkerchief to wipe the non-existent tears from the corners of her eyes. She sighed and said, however, aunt, as you can see, your granddaughter isn't an easy person to get along with. Will she listen to us if we talk to her softly like this? Then what do you have in mind? Bai Ning Shuang's expression darkened as a hint of viciousness flashed across her eyes. Of course we have to control them first. Once we have enough bargaining chips, we can discuss that matter with her. Isn't that right? Ha! Long Qian sneered. You're so naive. Bai Ning Shuang's face flushed red and her lips quivered. For a moment she didn't know how to respond to Long Qian. The Dragon Clan leader glared at Bai Ning Shuang coldly. Go back and watch over your son. Don't cause trouble for me. Bai Ning Shuang was intimidated by the Dragon Clan leader's stern tone. Although she was indignant, she could only return. When she returned to her own courtyard, she was even more displeased by the Dragon Clan leader's words. Seeing her son whining non-stop on the bed, Bai Ning Shuang's heart ached and she gritted her teeth. Achang. A nimble figure appeared in front of Bai Ning Shuang. The Kongkong's line. Ever since Benefactress came to this river of forgetfulness, she seems to be even busier. We can only see each other a few times in a day. The little monk was wearing a small white monk robe. He was holding a lollipop in his mouth as he squatted under a peach tree, mumbling softly. Another moon-white figure squatted beside the little monk Kong Kong with a lollipop in her mouth. She couldn't help but shake her head and say, Kong Kong, do you miss my sister? The small monk pursed his small diamond-shaped lips and remained silent. Kong Kong's? To her to be, eh? Kong Kong. Jolin sucked on a lollipop and said with a grin, actually, I've always been curious about something. Mrs. Sister. Please tell me that you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.